Hey guys, Pie Guy Rules here to talk about BoJack Horseman Season 4, and who better to bring on for a show that's produced in Canada than a resident Canadian, EyeofSol.
Hey everybody, it's good to be
Hi.
back once more to talk about one of my favorite shows of all time.
Yes. Now you did a quick look at this, right, recently?
Yeah, I did a mini Mondays on it where I just did a basic overview of the season, but I didn't do anything super specific about it because then it would have not been a mini Mondays.
So I'll link that if you want to hear some more consolidated thoughts. But here we're just going to kind of give like a podcasty thoughts of pretty much every episode.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the first one is See Mr. Peanutbutter Run. And this is the episode that starts off the season weirdly without BoJack in it. And it's all about Mr. Peanutbutter running for governor. So this was, I don't know if it's the only episode without BoJack, but I feel like it probably is.
Yeah, it is. There isn't oh, is he in Brat Brat Pew Pew? That season 3 episode?
I'm not entirely. I'm not. Yeah, right. But this is the one where his absence is noted, and technically he's not absent because his voicemail's at the end of the episode, so he gets a line in, so Will Arnett gets paid. But yeah, this is an episode where his absence is felt, and it's really interesting because at the end of the last season, the last thing we see him is running away from Ethan around and just seeing a bunch of horses run. So now we're seeing Mr. Peanutbutter run. The first line of the episode, what I love is that they say, "Oh, you want to do the horse show without the horse," which is about Mr. Peanutbutter's knockoff, but it also relates to the episode in general. So yeah, what did you think about this one?
Well, I love that it showed how Mr. Peanutbutter got to do Mr. Peanutbutter's house. Like, I honestly always wondered, like, how that came about, which is great. One thing that bothers me a little bit, though, it's nothing terrible, but it's like they made a big show of this whole Ethan around thing in season 3. Like, they really wanted to get it going, and then they don't mention it once in the entire season. So I figured that Ethan would be in this episode.
Yeah,
but he was not. So it's not a bad thing because I'm not super fond of Ethan or whatever his real name is. But I'm just saying it seems strange that they kind of were just like, oh, I guess we're done with that. Then in fact, that's kind of like the season's kind of like that a lot. Kelsey Jennings disappeared. Emily disappears after this episode. I guess we should just point out major spoilers as well.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I mean, I will say definitely on the Ethan around, like, I think it was a mistake to not at least make a joke about it. Like, it would be so BoJack to be like, weren't you supposed to be on that sitcom? And BoJack being like, what? And then like just write it off. But the fact that they don't do anything with it, it's weird because you think because like the whole thing was that Fuller House came out 2 years ago or last year. The last season was the first season after that had happened, so it seemed like the perfect setup for something. And then to just completely not even mention it, he's not in it at all. I mean, Sarah Lynn's mentioned a number of times throughout the season, as she should be, because technically speaking, this picks up like a few months after she dies. Like it's not, or it's. I guess actually it even starts like a few weeks after.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one weird thing about it. But otherwise, it does pick up on pretty much everything the last episode of last season, which I've just rewatched. Said like Diane taking the job at the feminist blog,
Mr.
Peanutbutter running for governor, which was his ex-wife approached him in the last season. Todd giving away his $8 million as a tip to the waitress.
Which I like that they bring that back with the cow still working as a waitress, but she's got like a cape and a crown and a staff or a scepter and everything.
Yeah. She likes to be tipped. That's, oh God, I just got that joke because she's a cow and cow tipping. Oh my God.
Tee.
literally everything's a pun. But about, I guess, because you got to talk about it as a season opener, but as an episode itself, it's a little weird because they had like an article a few months ago from one of the creators of the show talking about how they wanted to do something political and Trump and all this, and I was just kind of like going, ooh, I don't know.
Yeah, even South Park couldn't do Trump.
Yeah, and not because I don't think Trump should be mocked or anything like that. It's just a matter of the jokes are so stale at this point, and animation takes a long time. So even if the jokes weren't stale when you wrote them, it would just be done into the ground. Like everyone's kind of sick of hearing those jokes. I think, but it's interesting to see them do a political story throughout the whole season or most of the season, where one of the politicians is actually like a competent, nice, good person. Like, you don't really see that representation these days. Probably for good reason, because there's a lot of scummy politicians out there. But it's cool to see Kudchuk.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, the whole Mr. Peanut Butter Woodchuck Kudchuk thing reminds me a lot of that the 200th episode of The Simpsons, King of the Hill, where Homer. Oh, sorry, not King of the Hill. Trash of the Titans, where Homer tries to out the Secretary of Sanitation or whatever it is. Whatever the title is, and he's actually good at his job. Like, it's a government job, and he seems to care about it. And people say he's good at his job, but then Homer comes in and he takes over the job, and of course he's terrible at it. So the whole Mr. Peanut Butter Woodchuck Kudchuk thing reminds me of that one episode, but just over the course of like 9 episodes. So not that it's a bad thing, but it reminds me of that. And yeah, you're right. It's nice to know that they can lampoon politics without making it like so ridiculously black and white on each side.
Well, because instead of making fun of the party system or anything, they just kind of make fun of just the ridiculousness of all of it. I mean, we're not at a point in real life where people are like skiing for the for the governorship, but I don't know, we're fastly approaching it. So it's just like wacky stuff with the ski, and how it turns out that he's just like, he skied for Dartmouth and Mr. Peanut Butter doesn't even know how to ski, and it just shenanigans. Todd shenanigans with the drone. Is it really a drone if you're piloting it and sitting in it? Oh,
gotta love Todd-scapades. They're just, God, he's so adorable. Like, everything Todd does is so adorable. And I just, oh God, he's so cool. Yeah, the drone throne thing. As soon as he dropped the controller, I was just thinking like, oh man, here comes some wacky Todd shenanigans. This is great.
So yeah, I mean,
yeah.
In terms of the episode in general, I think it is kind of it's a goofier episode. It's a slower episode. It's a like, where are the characters now episode. It's not the highlight of the season. And it's not even like the big emotional punch. Like the second episode is more of that. But it's just kind of like, you see these characters again, and it's nice, and it sets up a lot of the ongoing plots. So it's like one of those episodes that's kind of like crucial, but it's not anything to write home about.
Yeah, it's kind of like getting you back in that big comfy butt groove that you've made in your big comfy chair, but you haven't sat in it in like a year, so you just kind of need to get your butt back in the groove before you're ready to take on the immense amount of pain.
Yeah. That's coming. So you're ready to move on?
We didn't mention Princess Carolyn, so I'll just say the start. Nothing she does in this episode is particularly amazing, but it starts off, what I have to say, is probably the second best story in the entire show so far. So
I love Princess Carolyn.
I just love that Judah's just keeps talking to her while she's puking. Well, I love Judah. Judah's great.
It's also important to remember that the last time BoJack and PC were in the same room was the episode at the restaurant, where she was begging him to take her back as an agent, and he wouldn't. Like, that's their last interaction in all these months and stuff. So that's why she has that reaction to BoJack, is because it's just like, oh, like, after all the stuff she's done for him, he wasn't willing to even give her a second chance. It's so horrible. And you'll see throughout the whole season that BoJack is really kind of disconnected from everybody. It takes him like 4 episodes to go see Diane. It takes him, I think, like 3 episodes to see Mr. Peanut Butter. Todd doesn't want to see him when Todd sees him. He explicitly says that things are working out better for him without BoJack in his life. And BoJack's whole arc is with his mom and his daughter. So he's just kind of disconnected. And it's interesting. It's interesting to see BoJack disconnected from the supporting cast. You ready to move on?
I think I am. Yeah.
So here's an episode. Yeah. So here's an episode where he is literally disconnected from everyone else in the cast. The old Sugarman Place. Great opening montage with the that song, the Road Through the Valley on a Horse with No Name. I don't know the name of the song, but very fitting for BoJack. I mean, like, this episode, uh I think this is one of those episodes that it's really good the first time you watch it, but as I watched it the second time, knowing the context of everything and why we're focusing on BoJack's mother and grandmother, because it's not really clear when you first watch it. It's like, who is, oh, okay, it's his mom, but it's also his grandma. Like, what does this have to do with anything? Are they just doing a parallel story? Okay, it's cool, it's enjoyable on its own. But when you know, like, okay, a big portion of the story is about BoJack's mother and her past, the episode becomes even more of like a big punch. Oh man.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like every sequence in this episode is just so beautifully done. The way sort of the past melds with the present through the animation is just, it's great. One thing I'll point out that kind of bugged me a little bit, as it was just like really coincidental. I don't know, in the context of this universe, maybe it's not as coincidental, but for a storytelling purpose, it's way too coincidental. It's like when BoJack's trying to figure out what to do and he's at that diner and then he picks up that pack of Sugarman's sugar and he sees his mom on it and it's like, okay, well, you know, like, okay, maybe if Sugarman's sugar was like the only sugar people in their universe, then okay, I could accept it, but it was like a little bit too coincidental. But other than that, the episode to me is, oh, it's so good. Like the whole sequence with Beatrice's mom singing when she's breaking down after Cracker Jack's death is so sad, like so emotional. And again, the way the past melds with the present in that scene is brilliant. The only thing I'll say in the episode is, I don't know why, but to me, the first time watching it, it seemed really long. I thought the episode was almost double length.
I think it's, if I had to say, I think it's probably just because, again, the relevance isn't immediately apparent. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of, it just kind of sneaks up. Like, why? Okay, well, this is a story that's happening, and it's parallels in some ways, but it's not like it's directly connected to anything that happens in this episode. Like, things are thematically relevant. Like, emotionally, BoJack goes through some of the same stuff that his mother is going through, but it's not like that story is necessary to understand the story in the present. If you were to take out that layer of the story and just have it be about BoJack and the neighbor, you know, I don't think it's not illegible. You know, you still understand the story. I think it's great to have the second layer, and again, especially once you know the context. But without the context, it does kind of almost feel like, where are they going with this?
Yeah, I kind of felt that a couple times watching it the first time, where until the scene where Beatrice's mom is shown to be lobotomized, and I'm just like, oh my god, no. Like, when she says, "Don't love anyone as much as I loved Cracker Jack," that is one of the most heartbreaking lines in anything I've ever heard. It's almost as heartbreaking as you'll wake up one day and find out that everybody loves you, but nobody likes you. And that is the loneliest feeling on Earth, on the world, on the planet, whatever it is. But that's just, oh man, like that's a sucker punch line right there. Gets you.
Sucker punch, lobotomy. But yeah, well, it's also cool that they don't actually say it. Like, they don't say lobotomy. They don't go into it. It's just kind of expected that you understand what happened. But it's like it's haunting. It really is. It's especially because they show her to be such a like witty, intelligent person before, like, you know, with the jokes about the arrow. Oh, arrows don't march and all that stuff. And it's not like she's just like, oh, I'm a housewife, and then afterwards she's a lobotomized housewife. She's genuinely witty and fun. It parallels what happens with her daughter in that she was witty and intelligent, and then stuff happened. But that's a much later episode.
So it's amazing setup to the story to come. And I guess the last thing that I can say is that, they start to humanize BoJack's mother, who was just like an unmitigated bitch the entire show. There was no context given to why she hates BoJack so much. And that was actually one of the things that bothered me about the show, is just how awful his mother was to her. But now with context, you can look back at those old episodes and it's like, oh, okay, I understand. So it's not like you could forgive it, but you understand it.
I think
and that makes it better.
I think the implication was always that his father was like beating her, or that he was just, you know, he's a miserable person. But yeah, we didn't have the context of her father and her mother and all of this, and it definitely it makes her an interesting antagonist for the season, which is weird to say about a character who is ostensibly an elderly, senile person, but she is kind of the main villain of the season.
Yeah.
We didn't talk anything about the neighbor. I liked
Yeah.
him and BoJack. They're just both cranky guys that don't really want to deal with each other, but they don't really have anyone else at the moment. I like the stuff with the door, how he's just like so bothered that the door, and BoJack is so stubborn that he'll actively break the door. There's great comedic stuff with the BoJack falling through the floor and the all of the house stuff crashing down around him. And then the ending. Like, what did you think of the BoJack just destroying the house just without a second thought?
Well, this might sound really like pretentious of me to say, but I think the whole ripping the door off after it's been fixed, destroying the house after it's been fixed, everything like that, I think it's supposed to be, you know, symbolic. The way BoJack won't let people fix him, even when they try their best. You know, like, you can fix BoJack's door, but that doesn't mean he isn't going to tear it off again. That sort of thing. So maybe that's a bit too pretentious way to look at it.
I think that's it.
Yeah, but so I think it's appropriate that BoJack spent all this time building himself back up, and then once he gets one signal that it's time to go back, he just destroys it all.
Yeah. What about, I mean, that's what happened with Secretariat. He spends all this time trying to get this role, his dream role. He's going to do it. It's going to be great for him. And then he just runs away at the end. He can't even do it. That's definitely BoJack in a nutshell. And it's just great. I wish, one thing I can say is that I wish the opening didn't have BoJack in it, because you know how it changes depending on what's going on in his house. I wish it was just literally the background, like the camera movement and everything.
It would have been more appropriate, to be honest. But maybe, I guess they didn't do it just in case this was the first episode you watched.
I don't know about like how the intro was animated. Maybe they just couldn't, because BoJack never changes in the intro, except for between
he's just
seasons.
a top layer. He could be removed.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe it'd be too avant-garde.
Oh, you know what would be better, actually, is if they had made his top layer transparent, so it's like it's a ghost.
Ooh.
A ghost of him doing the same thing over and over and over again in his house. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. I guess while we're on the subject really quickly, the intro, that new middle piece is pretty sweet.
Oh yeah.
The psychedelic one where he's drinking and it's like all this other stuff going around. Pretty crazy.
I love the way his suit sort of just or his tuxedo or whatever it is just sort of like snaps onto him, and the alcohol, like it's floating and then it goes into his glass. That's really cool. I still think the Secretariat one is my favorite one, though, just because I just really like the way the camera goes and all the stuff in the background. It's still my favorite, but yeah, the season 4 one's great.
Oh, one last thing about this episode, and then we can move on. I found it's kind of, I don't want to say it's a mistake, because it's just kind of like the anachronism of the show, but BoJack mentions that he's like a 12,000-pound horse, and then like in the next scene, we have this dragonfly lifting him up in the air, like, you know, hundreds of feet, and it's like, wait a minute, are we implying that he's that strong that he can lift that, or what? But
I mean, keep in mind, Todd's done that too. I think Todd has like pulled him inside, or Princess Carolyn has pulled him, or something like that. So when he says 1,200-pound horse, I mean, they say that in the first episode too, where he's like, how much alcohol does it take to get a 1,200-pound horse drunk, or whatever. And it seems like they've never properly represented his weight. I don't know. The thing is, though, maybe he's just speaking, because, you know, he has these feelings that he's fat, so maybe he's just saying it as an over-exaggeration of his actual weight. Maybe.
Are you saying something thematic about him and his family and having weight issues?
Well,
maybe. But no time for that. It's time for a Todd episode.
Hooray! Todd episode!
So this is... the show kind of does this sometimes where it breaks up episodes into being like focused on one primary character, and it shifts it around. Like the first one is Mr. Peanut Butter's episode. The second one's obviously BoJack. This one, it's Todd shenanigans, but 100% from his perspective, which is just a weird thing because you bounce around from helping Hollyhock to determine if BoJack's the parent, to going to helping Diane, helping Mr. Peanut Butter, and like he goes and helps everyone in the episode. And it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, Todd is, like I said, he's so adorable, and seeing any of his shenanigans are great for me. What I love about this episode, I mean, there's a lot of things to like about this episode. There's one thing about it I don't like, but let's.
And I agree with you on that, and we'll get that. Yeah.
Yeah. What I love about this episode is, despite people constantly saying that Todd is worthless and that he has no purpose and that he's a screw up and everything like that, you can see him trying so hard to help people, like to help the people in his life.
I think the line in this episode that really says something about Todd is when Mr. Peanut Butter's manager says, can you do that, Todd? Can you go and take the bus? And I don't even remember which part that is, but he says, I don't know if I can do anything. That's what makes it so exciting, or something like that. And it's just like, yeah, but he has no idea if he's going to be able to handle any situation. But the fact that he goes into it full force with a smile, that's Todd.
Mm-hmm. That's, yeah. And it's like the scene where he, right at the very end, where, you know, he's supposed to play the triangle at the Hollywood Bowl, and he only plays one note, and he goes all the way there just to play that one note when somebody else could totally do it for him. Yeah. You know, that just goes to show how far Todd will go for people. And then at the end, when he doesn't go to the Hollywood Bowl and nobody's mad at him, you know, I thought that was really good. Like, I was hoping the ending wouldn't be like everyone flips out because Todd doesn't show up. It's like they understand that he's his own person and he has his own things to do. And, you know, the reason why Todd doesn't show up is because he goes to an asexuals meeting. Which I actually really like that they explore his asexuality, because I don't know of a single cartoon character that is except maybe Daria.
Well, I mean, SpongeBob. No, but it's one of those things where it's like you see a lot of gay representation now, and that's just kind of like been the normal thing, and now you see a decent amount of it. But yeah, asexual, not quite as much. And if anything, it's more that it's just not stated than a character openly saying, hey, I'm asexual. What I liked about it was that it also, Todd didn't really seem sure about what he wanted. Like, what, you know, if that really fit him. And I think that's also interesting, because you always see characters that come out and state that they're this or that, and then they stick with that, and that's it. But Todd, not that I think Todd's not going to be asexual in the end, but just the fact that he's so kind of hesitant to say it himself is a really interesting journey, I think.
Yeah, I can totally 100% relate to that, because explaining to someone that you're gay or you're straight or whatever is very easy to do in comparison to explaining how you're asexual to someone. Because, you know, you're gay, you like men, you like women, whatever. You're straight, you like men, you like women, whatever. You're asexual, you might like men, you might like women, but you don't want to be with them in that way. You don't want to have sex, or you might want to have sex. You might masturbate, you might not masturbate. It's really difficult to explain to people. You know, it takes a lot longer than just saying, oh, I'm just gay. And that's why people think it's weird, is because humans are naturally wired to want to have sex with other people, but asexuals don't always have to. You know, they don't need to necessarily. They don't look at a picture of a hot woman or a hot guy and be like, dude, I'm going to tap that or anything like that. It's just kind of like, whatever. But sometimes you feel like maybe you do want to have a close relationship with someone, but then it's hard to get into it because you don't feel like you're satisfying them or they're not satisfying you or something. So it's hard to explain. And the fact that they try, at the very least, to tackle something like that, a topic like that, is really admirable of them.
And it's not, there's not an episode that's like Todd the asexual episode. Like, it's an episode about that. It's just a part of his character now. You know, it's not, it doesn't seem like it's really anything that's going to need to lead any stories. It's just a part of who he is. And if he ends up dating someone, which is kind of hinted at the end of the season, then so be it. But I don't think the character needs it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the problem with a lot of gay characters, is that once they come out as gay, that's just they're the gay guy. They're gay forever and never, and that's the only thing they have. That's why I like Xander from Drawn Together, is that he comes out as gay, and yeah, there's a lot of gay jokes and everything, but he's still a character. He still has other things going for him.
And we'll talk about there's another unusual sexual group represented towards the end of the season that I want to talk about as well. But
Clown dentist?
No, Hollyhock's parents.
Yeah.
Clown dentist.
Imagine that, self-identifying as a clown dentist.
I mean, anyway, I think we got away because something that's a little weird is that, well, I guess let's get to the thing that I think both of us don't like about this episode is Hollyhock's inclusion. It's weird because you'd think that she'd show up more for BoJack instead of just like, hey, I read that you're Todd in this book and you're going to help me and I'm going to chloroform you and all this stuff. It's just a weird way to tackle it. If anything, you think she'd go to Diane. But beyond that, Hollyhock is kind of a brat in this episode.
Yeah, I know. I was really, really hoping she wasn't gonna continue being like that, because, you know, there was a fair amount of build-up with her in like semi-introduction at the end of the third season, and I'm like, I couldn't tell how old she was in that brief flash of her on screen. But then, yeah, when she showed up here, she's just acting like a spoiled little child, like eating all of BoJack's food and not wanting to help Todd, not cleaning up or anything. It's like, come on, do you want to meet BoJack? Do you want him to have a good impression or not? Like, it seems like she goes to all this trouble to go there, and then when she gets there, she just totally loses interest. Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense either, because she's so proactive in finding her mom, and yet she just doesn't. And like, I get the whole thing of, okay, well, I have enough dads, I don't need BoJack as a dad, but in your quest to find your mom, you still need BoJack. You'd think that she'd take the extra 5 minutes to go and run down to the pharmacy or whatever to get it tested. It's like, really? And she's nothing like this the rest of the season. But in this episode, I think the idea is that they want us to believe that she is BoJack's child. And so doing all these jokes about how she ate a box of donuts and then passed out on the couch, like that makes her sound like, oh, haha, that's like BoJack. But it really just kind of makes her seem like a jerk, but she's not a jerk. Her character isn't a jerk. She's not supposed to be. And she, like you said, she went through all this trouble to go to Hollywood, and then she just suddenly is like, all right, Todd, you're gonna do this for me.
Yeah. Also, one thing that's good to mention about this episode too, and the season in general, is after BoJack comes back from running away and being gone for a year, people don't just accept him back right away.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, Todd's not ready. Diane, he doesn't go and see Diane. PC doesn't even care anymore. Like, she sort of does, but she doesn't go running into his arms or anything like that.
She's been so burned by him. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, because PC's moved on. She has someone else to love and someone else to take care of. And yeah, so it's just nice to see that their lives are not completely centered around if BoJack is there or not.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's nice, because in most other cartoons, if a character disappears and comes back after however much time, everyone's always like, oh, I'm so glad you're back. Oh, we didn't know what we'd do without you. And it's like, hey, how about you guys have a life instead?
It also, a lot of shows also kind of forget, like if something happened last season, it's kind of like assumed that it was a year ago in story, but it's not. I mean, at this point in the story, it's a year, but at the start of the story, at the start of the season, it is right after the end of last season, where BoJack burned Princess Carolyn. He burned Todd by sleeping with his potential love interest. You know, he did all these things, and the characters don't forget that. The characters don't treat it like it was a long time ago, because it wasn't for them. And I have, there's something else, there's something I want to say about the reset button more, but at the very, very end when talking about Diane and Mr. Peanutbutter. But anything else about this episode in particular?
Yeah, I would just say that the whole Diane and Mr. Peanutbutter thing, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of getting sick of Diane's shtick, to be honest, where she just constantly tries to force herself into controversial situations so she can feel important. I mean, it's still, sorry, it's still entertaining, but it just, it's the same kind of thing. It's the same, like this whole girl cruise fracking thing is the same thing as the Hank Hippopopoulos thing. And it's like she tries so hard, but she's not going to win.
But she's not wrong. I'm not saying she's like wrong. Diane. I mean, that's her character, is that she does it partially because she likes, it feeds her ego, but also because she's not wrong, and because she's not afraid to say that at times. But other times she does it because it's very self-serving for her. Like, I think going up, well, I mean, I guess that's the next episode. But anything else about the Todd episode before we move on to fracking?
Nope. I mean, hooray! Next episode.
So, and it's, as we do this discussion type thing, some of the plot threads, like to commence fracking, began in Hooray Todd episode and before, but I think since this is the episode that focuses on it, we can talk a lot more about that specific point, even if some of the stuff happened in previous episodes. Because the seasons do have ongoing narratives, and it's a little hard sometimes to remember exactly which detail occurred in which episode. So this is like the big deal about this season with Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter, is that he's running for governor, but he knows nothing. He literally knows nothing. And not just that, but he's being run by someone who's being controlled by lobbyists, and a lot of dangerous thoughts are getting put into his head, and Diane just refuses to stand for it. And the only reason she did is because she believed that he had no chance. So, like, oh man, some of the stuff with Mr. Peanut Butter and Diane, like the double entendres with fracking, like it slayed me. Just really stupid jokes with the word that is fracking. And I also kind of like that they go the entire season without actually really explaining what fracking is. Just something about drilling and dangerous liquids and fire. I don't really know what fracking is, but I know a lot of people don't like it.
Well, fracking, I'm not entirely sure, like, everything about it, but because I live near, well, not near, but I live in a place that talks about fracking and oil sands and all this crap. Basically, fracking is just a method of getting oil, like oil from underground reserves and everything like that, but it's extremely dangerous for the surrounding area because it makes earthquakes and tremors, and it makes the land unstable and completely unusable, and it's bad. Let's just say it's bad.
Yeah, I got that much. But yeah, the funny thing about this is that this plot was like just point blank told to us at the end of season 3 when Diane was having her interview with her new boss at Girl Cruise. She mentioned something like, "Oh, and would you write an article that directly opposed your husband for whatever reason?" And Diane's like, I wouldn't do that. And then she's like, "Well, what if you really had to?" And Diane was like, eh. And that's literally what happens here. It's so tricky because I kind of agree with both of them in that, I mean, Diane is right, and what Mr. Peanut Butter is doing is dangerous, but it's an issue that she should have solved with him. If she had just been honest from the start and said he would have been a bad governor, they might have fought about it, but I think he would have listened to her. Instead, she just lied to him, and then all of a sudden now she's like seemingly randomly, arbitrarily contradicting him. From his perspective, I don't think he really... It looks like she's just trying to make their marital problems public.
That's what I mean, is that it kind of pisses me off that Diane's constantly putting herself in these controversial situations, even when it comes to her own family.
Yeah.
And it bugs me a little bit. One thing I do like is the way that Miss Peanut Butter and Diane start having angry sex.
Oh, God.
Which is funny. The whole other story about BoJack helping Hollyhock find her biological mother. I like the story, although... Again, it's like the Sugarman sugar packet thing in the second episode where they go to one woman who says that she's Hollyhock's mother. Sort of reminds me of the Venture Brothers character Myra, where she's like gone crazy and thinks that Hank and Dean are her kids, and so it reminds me of that. But the way that this crazy fan had like compiled a specific book about all the women who would probably be Hollyhock's mom, it's like... Okay, come on. Like, what are the chances of that? Come on, man.
I mean, I think it's like one of those things where if they didn't do that, then it'd just be Facebook, because it's not like you couldn't find these people. Otherwise, I would have liked to see a little more, because we really just get the crazy fan and then the woman and the time traveling medium show. I would have really kind of liked to see more of BoJack's like previous lovers. But if you recall, this is all just lovers that he had in one specific month of that year, which I think is like a funny detail to keep in mind. But I think the real purpose of it was to really just kind of have BoJack and Holly interacting, and Holly starting to wear off on, or not wear off, but BoJack starting to like Holly and understand her, and they bond over the fact that they can't, neither of them knows how to cook something in the microwave. BoJack just says making food is impossible. It's like
I like Princess Carolyn and Ralph's story too.
Yes,
it's just how frantically they need to have sex, and they're just going great. It reminds me sort of like a dumb rom-com movie, and I just like they're just like screw it and just have sex in the police car.
Yep. And the her gynecologist she went on a date with in the last season, one of her failed dates before she met Ralph.
Yeah, the albino rhino gyno who was also a wine addict.
Yep. But yeah, that whole thing. I mean, it's like, it's funny in this episode, their efforts to try to make the baby, but then things get dark. So this is probably the happiest Princess Carolyn gets this season. I think this is like the peak right here, because and this is also, I believe, where we first learned that she had her first miscarriage, or the first miscarriage that we know of.
Well, I mean, it would be obvious because, she, in the first episode, she's shown to be pregnant. Well, not shown, but, like, it's implied that she's pregnant, but then a year passes by and she doesn't have any
well,
kittens.
Right. All right,
or mice babies. So, so it's not overtly said, but it's more implied that she had at least one miscarriage.
Yeah, and I believe the show said she's 40 at this point, too.
Okay, well, so she was 40 at one episode, so she'd be like 42 at this point.
Maybe, probably. Anyway, point is she's old.
Well, she's not that old. She hasn't hit menopause yet, so she's still
literally
violent.
Ancient, older than B.
Yeah.
Anyway, you ready to move on to the next episode?
Well, I'm just gonna say here for all those out there that Ralph is a much better and way less annoying boyfriend for Princess Carolyn than Vincent.
Hey, don't you be dissing Three Boys in a Trench Coat.
I tolerated Vincent until that one episode where it's like she sees Kevin as himself, and then they keep switching places, and it's like, how stupid are you, PC?
But they knew when to retire the joke. Yeah, I mean, Ralph, there's not really a point this season where I don't like Ralph. There's an episode where he comes off as a bit less sympathetic because of his family, but otherwise he through and through he doesn't really do anything wrong. And
he's rich, but he's a nice guy, and he doesn't flash his cash or anything like that. He truly cares about Princess Carolyn.
Yeah.
And he seems really nice and sweet.
Yep. And yeah. All right, so
also in this episode, Hollyhock, her attitude gets way better and is much less of an annoying jerk.
Yeah, well, that's why it feels like it was more just an out of character thing in the Todd episode than it was anywhere. I mean, to the point where even when she's being drugged, she acts like a nicer person than. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Thoughts and prayers. So, pretty much every season of the show, they have one episode that's kind of a I guess just like a take on current, not take on current, a very specific issue. Like the whole thing is a take on current events. But each season they kind of do one episode that's like, they did the episode about kind of the inhumane conditions of farm animals. They did the episode about abortion last season. And then this season, this episode is part about gun violence, but also about empowering women. And I guess it's like one of those things where when a show kind of gets pretty political, like it does in this episode, this show is, in general, is very liberal, but it's typically not super overtly in your face, except for, again, like one episode a season. I think that when a show is written well enough, it doesn't matter whether you agree with it or not on the issue it's presenting. Because if it can still make you laugh, if you still find the story to make sense and to be a good story, regardless of if you think it actually mirrors real life events or has any relevance, you can still enjoy it. Like, I think, just to throw a random example out there, the Futurama episode, what was it, Proposition Infinity, was just a terrible, poorly written thing that was meant to be, haha, Prop 8 is a thing about gay marriage in California, so we're going to have our episode about robot marriage. And they just, it's so thinly veiled, so poorly written, and like they go through the cliches of, well, Farnsworth doesn't want it because, I don't know, he's old and old people are conservative. Oh, but he was one, and he was scorned by a robot and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I found that episode to be awful, even though I agreed with it on the issue it was presenting. This episode,
it's all about how you go about it.
Exactly. This episode, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure really how I feel about some of the stuff presented, but I still laughed at the episode. I still thought it was an interesting story. And I do kind of like the angle of like, well, yeah, I mean, when real life events happen, unfortunately, it does affect movies. And it's kind of shallow to think about that, but it's also not, because this is a lot of people's careers and a lot of money and a lot of stuff like that. And it is interesting to see how real life events can cause some movies to get delayed or canceled or edited.
Well, it's like Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie after 9/11. It was a fair chunk of it was changed. They stopped circulating the trailer that featured a spider web between the two towers, and it was so I get that. What I love about this episode is the whole thoughts and prayers angle, where everyone's just like thoughts and prayers, but obviously it doesn't do anything and mass shootings keep happening. Right. It reminds me of the way Facebook is, where something bad happens and then people are posting, my thoughts and prayers are with you, or sending my energy your way, and it's like that doesn't do anything. And I know prayers, whatever, you could debate that if you're a religious type, but really, it doesn't do anything. So it's just funny the way everyone's like, all they care about is the movie, and then they have to sort of check themselves and be like, oh, and thoughts and prayers because people died, that kind of thing. So I thought that was really funny. What I really think is funny about this episode, though, is it reminds me so much of that South Park episode with Apologies to Jesse Jackson, where it's like, so when you put the weapon into the other side's hands, the ones who were previously in power have to instantly ban it because they don't want any shift of power at all. So I love that line. I guess we just learned today that the US hates women more than they love guns. And it's just like, oh God, it's true.
That's a really funny line.
Like I would not doubt that even for a second. If women started being the driving force behind gun violence, which I have no statistics to back up my statement, but let's just say that based on what I know, pretty sure that women are not the leading people who participate in gun violence.
Certainly not.
Yeah. But if women started defending themselves and walked down the street with the same level of confidence as men, you can pretty much guarantee that is what would happen. They would start pointing out how women, are like, ooh, violent, gun crazy, everything like that. And then the way Diane's like, well, he can either give women the right to be that way, or you can just ban all guns. So just ban all guns. I just think it's really funny. Like, that whole angle, even though I'm usually against overt feminist type episodes, I do think it was handled extremely well. And
I think it also. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
I think it also really highlights Diane's what's the word? Hypocrisy, because it's like her whole. Well, I hate guns, but you know what? This gun makes me feel good, so let's go for guns now.
Kind of reminds me of Lois Griffin, actually.
Or Marge. Marge had the same thing. Super against guns until she got one. So that was it. I also did you get the feeling when you saw the guy harassing Diane in the Star that it was going to be a setup for the movie, like it was a publicity thing? It looked so almost fake to me that I was like, okay, so they're going to do this thing where the actress like is empowered and then they circulate that video and then it'll make the movie like appropriate and good because they're defending, you know, women are defending themselves, and that's what the movie's about. I thought it was going to be an angle, but it wasn't.
Oh, no. I'd need to watch it again, but I didn't feel that way the first time. I love that after they take out all the gun violence in the movie, it's just that one scene, just where she walks up and asks where the guy is, and that's literally it.
No, she asks where H&M is, so it'd be a great H&M ad, is the thing, which is, I believe, a clothing store. Yeah, I mean, well, this is also, so that's like the one part of this episode, but this is also the episode that reintroduces BoJack's mother to the story in the present time. One of the minor things that I really like about her character is that she has lipstick on her teeth. It's just such a small detail, but when you're older and your hands shake, you can't apply lipstick correctly, so she gets it on her teeth. Like, it's just like the smallest thing. There's that. It's BoJack is really mean to his mother, and it's uncomfortable, but I 100% agree with him. Like, I think to the point where he was going a little far with the putting on the play, but otherwise, she was so bad to him growing up, and he's right the whole time that she's still a monster, even if she is senile. It's frustrating to see a character. I don't know. What did you think about the way BoJack treated his mother? Obviously, it's supposed to be shocking, and it is still shocking, even if I think it's at least partially justified. It is still shocking and a little uncomfortable to see anyone treat someone that's clearly suffering from dementia that way.
Yeah. Well, okay. As somebody who really, really loves their mom and has a great relationship, like adult relationship with their mom, I couldn't imagine anybody hating their mother that much. So it hurts me in that way to see that someone could feasibly hate their mother that much. So that's sort of just, you know, it's kind of unrelated, but
I think it's intentional.
Anybody who hates their moms, even in Archer, they don't go that far. They never overtly say that Archer hates his mother. They're just, you know, they're just kind of shitty to each other.
But Archer's also a lot more on the comedy side of things. They'll make jokes about, you know, how she's gonna starve Abogine, but in this show, BoJack's mom actually does that.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying, is that even other cartoons that take the whole like bitch mom angle don't go that far. So it hurts me to see that BoJack has absolutely no forgiveness in his heart, but she doesn't deserve any forgiveness from him. So it's hard for me to explain. Like, she's clearly, it seems like he can only really express how much he hates her when she's at her lowest point, like her weakest, most pathetic point in life. And it's like, maybe if he could have confronted her about these issues earlier, they could have had a better relationship later. You know, so it makes me sad to see, like, this is the end of the road. He's never going to love her. And
but I mean, even seeing, and again, this is stuff that we know later and you only know on rewatch, but at the end of the season, when we see her talking with him, when it's a few years after Horseman Around, and she gives him the picture, she's still awful to him. She's older then, and her husband hadn't died yet, but she's still just really mean to him. I mean, even flashbacks that we see, you know, earlier in the series, she's still mean to him. It's not one of those things where she's softened up. It's just literally now she's in dementia, and so now she's quote unquote softer, even though she's really not. One of the other interesting things about this on rewatch is that she's constantly insulting Henrietta, who we don't know who that is at this point, but that's Hollyhock's mom, and Hollyhock is the one defending her. And it's just this weird thing where she's being mean to BoJack, but she's really being mean to Hollyhock's mother, and yet Hollyhock is the one that's defending her, and BoJack's the one that's hating her. It's a weird extra layer that's on the episode. Sorry, but continue what you were saying.
What was I saying?
The way BoJack treats his mom. I don't know. Maybe you didn't have any.
So it's true that Beatrice was constantly shitty to BoJack, even in his adult years. But what I mean is that in all of those flashbacks, BoJack never once confronts his mother about the way she acts. Like, he sort of he tries to deny it. He tries to get around it. He tries to sarcastically retort to it, but he never just straight up says, "Mother, you are a terrible person." So I just think, like, obviously I couldn't say for sure because you don't see their entire lives, but I just think, like, if BoJack could have confronted her about the way she treated him, then maybe they could have had a better relationship in the future. Because it really bothers me to see someone hate their own mother that much. Because it's like your mother is like the one person you can always trust to love you, and yet she hates her son.
I mean,
it's just but she has a good reason to hate him. She has several good reasons to hate him. Now we know. We didn't know that before, but now we do. But also, he has several good reasons to hate her too. So it's like everybody's justified here, but that doesn't make it good.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say she's justified as much as you see where she's coming. I guess she has a reason, because justified implies that, like, there's no justifiable reason why anyone should hate their child when their child has no reason to exist other than them. True. Not that I think that's what you're saying. I just want to make that clear, that she has a backstory that gives explanation, I guess.
Yeah, maybe that was a poor choice of words. I would say, they're not justified, but understood more, for sure, given more clarity. Definitely.
What? So this is, as far as I'm aware, this episode is the only Trump jokes in the season, and it's on the ticker tape in CNN. There's a joke about how the president is good at. It's like president bans ball and cup game. President declared best at ball and cup. It's like just this stupid. Oh yeah, it's like ball and cup tournament declared fake news. President. They don't say Trump. They just say president. Very tastefully done. I enjoyed that. Someone pointed that out to me because I didn't catch that the first time. And then one more thing. I don't know why I have this in my memory banks, but there was a Full House episode about elder dementia, like the horsing around thing. Like, Full House did that episode.
Oh,
just super awkward.
I never watched Full House, so I don't know that.
Lucky you. Yeah.
Well, I hate sitcoms with a passion, so yeah.
I do too now, but I loved it as a kid. Yeah, there's an episode where the middle girl befriends someone at like an elder place, and she takes him home and like doesn't realize that he's like, I was gonna say demented, but I don't think that's the correct way to say has dementia.
No.
Yeah, that's a nicer word. And then he just like forgets where he is in the middle of the episode. Anyway, I just thought it was weird that they took like this weird, like very special episode trope from a sitcom and actually applied it to horsing around. Very fitting. But let's see, anything else? I think that really steals away from the main stories, because it's so interesting. His relationship with his mother and the way she acts is also very interesting, because it's not like, it's hard to tell how much she's aware of, even throughout the whole season. I mean, I think you could even make an argument that she's aware the entire time, and it's just being spiteful because that's just who she is. She's, even in her old age, she's completely spiteful.
I would say that everything to her comes in with perfect clarity except for BoJack. Like, she understands Hollyhock, she understands Tina, her nurse, she understands everything, but anything to do with her family doesn't come in clear. So the baby doll, and BoJack,
I think,
like nothing of that comes clear to her.
If I were to think, I mean, that's certainly the idea. If I were to think about it, especially in the context of the 11th episode, perhaps it's more just that she's stuck in the past, and the only things that she can contextualize are things that were in the past. Since BoJack didn't exist when she was growing up, or was a baby when in the past, she can't see him. She sees the maid. Maybe, I don't know. I think there's a lot of things you can say about it, and I think that's what's really cool about her character, is that you can come up with theories of, is she completely she just doesn't know what she's doing? Is she stuck in her past? Is she aware of some things, not others? Is she aware of everything? It's
I say
interesting.
that I say the clarity that she has in everything except for the baby doll and BoJack is because she seems to understand that Hollyhock is, slightly overweight.
But she doesn't know it's Hollyhock. She doesn't
No,
know
but
it's the baby that.
what I mean is that she's cognizant enough to realize that this person in front of her, quote unquote, needs help with her weight problem. So she's obviously aware that Hollyhock is there. Maybe she doesn't know who she is necessarily because, she doesn't know who she is. But because Hollyhock, for all intents and purposes, is not part of Beatrice's family, she can properly, contextualize her and see her for what she really is. And what she sees her is a nice but fat girl who needs to be thinned out.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh at that. Just yeah, I mean that could be it. It's just that she has blinders for everything related to her family, and since Hollyhock is technically not her family, yeah,
Hollyhock has none of Beatrice's blood.
Yeah, not a Sugarman. Yeah. So anyway, next episode.
Moving on.
Yeah. So I love this episode. This is do you want to say the title of this one?
Stupid piece of shit.
Yeah. A line that BoJack says to himself quite a lot here. And this is the big internal monologue episode, and God, did they just nail the whole just intrusive thoughts and anxiety and that sort of thing, of just the repetition of telling yourself you're not good enough and being paranoid about, like, BoJack's whole thing about, like, well, if I give her the keys to my car, then she'll get it all gross and she'll wreck it. But if I go, then my mom will tell her bad things about me. It's so paranoid, and it's so, like, true to at least what I've experienced with anxieties. That was just a great way to represent it, and the visuals that go along with it, the kind of, like, scratchy line drawings, really good, I think.
Yeah, the inner thoughts part is definitely the best part of the episode, and yeah, when you're in a self-deprecating, funk sort of, it's impossible to not think that way. And the way his thoughts just spiral out of control, and the way his thoughts are always bringing him back to the worst things he's done, like with Penny, and Sarah Lynn and everything like that. It's like, yeah, when your brain is in that state, it always brings you back to the worst things you've done. And it's so well presented here. And the way, like, the last time you see his inner thoughts, where it just keeps getting louder and louder and more crazy. And it's, it's like I don't know if the majority of people listening to this will ever know, but it's like, if you've ever had a time where your thoughts are just so deafening and you can't escape them, because how the hell can you escape your own mind? And it's like, it's louder than a tsunami, but you can't escape it, and it's horrible. So the way that it's represented here visually is it's brilliant.
And you see that he always ends up back at the bar, which, not something that I can personally relate to, but I can relate to the idea of, you have a crutch and it's almost like you feel like you owe it to yourself to go do something you like, just to try to balance out the bad things. But in doing so, you're not dealing with the bad things. You're just making your situation worse. If you decide to go somewhere and just do something that whole day, if I were to waste my day playing video games instead of dealing with the work I have in front of me, you're just making it worse. That's all he's doing. And his speech at the end about how he'll just go and he'll, like, just park. And he just, like, he just wanted to get away from the family thing, because it was just, he just can't handle it. And then the big punch at the end about how Hollyhock basically tells him that she has the same problem, and that, oh yeah, it's just a stupid teenage thing, right? Like, oh man, oh, that was so hard. Oh, great way to end the episode.
Yeah. No, that's I would say the best part about it is accurately representing an abstract concept into a legitimate visual experience is great, because thought is abstract. You can think 17 things at once. Well, some people can, but trying to sort of parse out all that information when you're feeling so paranoid and so down on yourself, that rush of feeling and thoughts that you can't untangle is, man, it's awful. I can speak from experience that it is just, it's awful. you know, because when you're in that situation, you become your own worst enemy, and nothing anybody says can break you out of it. So it's
and
you know, it's such a strong. I could just gush about the visual representation forever, but let's just say I like it. It's
oh
good.
yeah, I mean, and it's not just confined to this episode either. It comes back later. So like, if the show were to incorporate this, like just more, not in every episode, but just, you know, keep going with this sort of representation of BoJack's thoughts, I'd be all for it. Because it's great. But other things that happen in this episode, this is where Carolyn and Rutabaga kind of have to team up, and they're great. Like, I don't mean like as a couple, I mean like just bouncing off each other, just the way they talk and the way they both have that kind of like agent speak where they're just super fast and they're throwing off puns and they're like, okay, we'll book this and we'll book that. I don't know. They have a great rapport with each other.
Yeah, that's, you know what I was really grateful for? When I saw Rutabaga come back, I was like, oh, please, please, please do not have him interfere with Princess Carolyn and Ralph's relationship.
What, you don't
really,
like?
Please don't, because PC had a good thing going with Ralph. They loved each other, and it's like, Rutabaga, don't be an ass, okay? Just, and the good thing is that he was not an ass. He was a rabbit, and he seemed to mind his own business. He didn't like, there wasn't a single scene where he's like, so how's it going with blah blah, you ever think about getting back together? And it's like, so Rutabaga is committed to his family and his children, and he doesn't interfere with PC's relationship with Ralph. So I was super grateful for that. And yeah, I like seeing Rutabaga too. The whole Courtney Portnoy wordplay thing starts getting a little bit out of control.
That's
like, I don't even know what you're saying anymore.
That's a running gag from I think it's just been in the show in general that Princess Carolyn always gets these lines. Yeah, these lines of like, I can't even imitate it. Like it's impressive. I didn't really care about her though. Portnoy, her and Todd's fake relationship. I'm not gonna lie. Todd, for me, has a strong showing in the beginning of the season and then just kind of dips off. I will get to the clown stuff, but in this episode, I like that he fights again. I like that eventually he does say, like, look, I'm not going to do this fake marriage thing. I got to do what's right for me. But just kind of like, I don't know. I don't hate it. I just nothing about it really struck me as a funny thing or like a good setup or anything. She was just kind of vapid and annoying.
It's like BoJack, Beatrice, and Hollyhock's story is so incredibly strong that it completely eclipses the Bee story and just makes it totally unnecessary. Because the whole marriage, the whole fake Courtney Portnoy Todd marriage, it goes nowhere. So it kind of like the whole thing with Rutabaga coming back doesn't really go anywhere either. And again, I'm super grateful that he didn't interfere with PC and Ralph's relationship, but to be honest, it didn't go anywhere. He was just going, hey, I'm back, okay, bye.
I think the idea of Portnoy is just that she's Carolyn's star client now because she doesn't have BoJack. Mr. Peanutbutter's running for whatever. Todd, whatever. So she had to have some client is the thing. I think that's the idea. And the fact that it goes nowhere is just a part of PC's arc here that's unfortunately on a downward spiral. And I say unfortunately for her, I say because it's fortunate for us because I think aside from BoJack's, hers is the strongest arc in the season and really powerful.
I'd say it's one of the strongest arcs overall, just out of any of them.
Yeah. So two things in this episode. So aside from so BoJack's mom moves into BoJack's house, the house of many guests. But I guess that's sitcoms for you. They like to characters just hey, why don't you come and stay on my couch? It's no big deal to characters in TV shows. Anyway, the two things here is that the coffee first shows up. Beatrice makes coffee for Hollyhock, and then Beatrice has a line to BoJack calling him Henrietta and saying stupid waste of my husband's jism, which BoJack takes to mean that, oh, okay, you're talking about me as in son, but no, she's talking about the fact that Henrietta had relations with her husband.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that was such a clever way to wind that in. And like all throughout from here on out, the coffee gets referenced a lot in passing, and there's a lot of lines that kind of get a double meaning. Even in the intro, now that his mom has moved in, you could see her pouring coffee for Hollyhock. And this is also, this is the episode with the doll too. Yeah.
You know what's funny? I probably wasn't the first one to point this out, but when I was making my Mini Mondays video for this, I was like going frame by frame through one of the clips in this episode, and there's one moment where BoJack takes the baby away from Beatrice's arms, and then for about 5 frames, there are 2 babies on screen because Beatrice has the baby in her arms and BoJack has the baby in his hand.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's dumb, like stupid, but I was just like, oh, look at that. Animation. That is honestly the first animation error that I noticed out of the entire show. There's probably more that I didn't notice.
Well,
but, yeah, that's the only one I ever saw. So congrats for going 4 seasons without a noticeable animation error.
But let's be honest. It's of all the things that I love about BoJack, like ambitious cinematography and crazy animation, not really up there. It's a little static in that way. A little, I don't want to say cheap, but I don't know. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Basic. It's basic.
Yeah, it gets the job done. And there are scenes that do have interesting cinematography and stuff, but you can tell that they're not working with a crazy budget. That's basically what I mean to say. I don't mean to insult the show in that way. I just mean that it's not above and beyond in most cases with animation.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like Jimmy Neutron, where compared to the cinematic approach that the movie had, when you look at the show, it's like everything is shot so bland and so boring. But that doesn't really take away from the actual show itself. It doesn't make it bad. It just makes it less visually interesting. But with both shows, it's fine for the type of stories they're trying to tell.
I think, and I think also with BoJack is that the character design is so strong that it kind of like the actual art is strong, that it makes up for the fact that maybe the animation isn't as interesting. Because like some of these animal characters, like they go crazy with the designs.
Yeah, they do their best to distract you from the basic nature of the animation by injecting so much visual charm in the backgrounds, like with all the little animal things and all the references, and like like those scenes where they're doing flashbacks and they're driving down the road singing songs in the car, and there's all these references to the time period, and like everything is splashed with visual charm and detail. That it's there's another show that I talked about that's like that, where it's very basic but it has so much charm and detail in the backgrounds, and I'm trying to remember what it is.
No, probably not Archer.
It's not coming to mind at the moment. So I think we should probably move on.
Well, just one more thing. What did you? Well, I love the fact that they address that someone lives under BoJack and has to deal with all the crap that he's constantly throwing off the balcony. The cotton candy from, I think it's the first episode.
It is the first episode.
Yep, is mentioned. I mean, even earlier in the season, Todd, when he's cleaning up BoJack's house, just shovels the garbage off the balcony. I thought that was clever. What did you think of like the doll in general? At least when you're watching the first time, because you can tell right off the bat the show wants you to think something about this doll. It's not just some random thing. It's like this woman who hates her child is now obsessed with this little doll. Like, it's saying something. The first time through, it's kind of hard to figure out. But then after the 11th episode, it's like, okay, so she had a similar doll as a kid and it burned in a fire because she had scarlet fever. But what do you like? I guess if you wanted to argue the interpretation that she's cognizant, you could say that she just has this doll to spite BoJack even further.
Well, I wouldn't say that actually.
I'm saying you could. I'm not saying.
I was gonna say I never got the feeling that Beatrice's actions were malicious in any way, despite what she says about Henrietta. Like, if she wanted to be malicious, she was never, in all the scenes we've ever seen, she was never ever one to mince words. She would just always constantly come out and just say, "You ruined me, BoJack. This is your fault. Don't you ever cry." Anything like that. So I don't think if Beatrice was actually cognizant of her surroundings entirely, that she would be pretending the way that she does, or the way that she would. So that's why I think that she's not. This is legit, bro. Like, she doesn't understand what's going on with BoJack and the baby doll, but she does understand Henriette or Hollyhock and Tina, her nurse, and her situation. And
It's
everything
not.
like that.
I don't. I don't. I don't think she's cognizant. I just think it's an interesting theory to say that she knew.
Yeah.
I would go with my theory of she's kind of stuck in certain time periods, and maybe in regret, and maybe the baby is regret that she made Henrietta give up her baby. Maybe that's why she clings so closely to the doll. Or maybe
I was thinking maybe it's the baby she could have had with that other guy.
Oh,
with the goat person, because she was pregnant. This is what I call this series the pregnant series. This pregnant season, because like everybody's getting preggers in this season.
Not Princess Carolyn.
Oh, well, she is pregnant a couple times.
Well, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We'll get to that.
Yeah. So this is also halfway through the season, by the way. So the next episode, I think we both kind of agreed was the weak point of the season. Underground.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Terrible title, by the way. Really? Like after some of the weird titles of like Thoughts and Prayers and stuff, you go with Underground. So this is the one where thanks to all the fracking at a fancy dinner party, like everyone, the entire main cast and a bunch of side characters get stuck underground under Mr. Peanut Butter's house. And Mr. Peanut Butter takes the role of leader to save the day, but surprise, he's not a good leader. Who knew?
Yeah, and then there's a side story about Princess Carolyn and Todd getting lost in ant tunnels, and then I'm not even sure I really get it. The ants want representation because the female ants want to have sex with the male ants, and then that kind of doesn't really go anywhere. And
I think and
BoJack and Diane just go get drunk the whole time.
I think they needed a B plot, but I guess they didn't need to have Carolyn and Todd be underground. They could have been in above ground, and I feel like an above ground B plot would have kind of made the episode feel less claustrophobic. But it was interesting, but it was like, literally they walk a little bit, they come across these, I didn't even realize they were ants at first. I thought they were like, I don't know, a mole people or something. Like not literal I don't know what, I don't know. But
Chuds. Wait, the Chuds live in New York. Never mind.
No, what's the crab people from South Park?
They're just called crab people.
Yeah, all right, fine. Anyway, the story is literally they come across them. They're like, "Oh, your name's Princess," and then she's like, "No, actually, I'm a manager." And they're like, "Oh, can you negotiate deals for us?" And then she's like, "All right," and then she does, and the deal is something about orgies and. RuPaul is there.
I don't even know. Like I could not follow the B plot at all.
and then they help them move the house back because of gentrification and Hollywood people bringing the rent. Yeah, it doesn't have any time to do anything. And it's also just kind of like a Deus Ex Machina because it doesn't have anything to do with anything. And then just boom, solved.
Well, it wouldn't be a Deus Ex Machina because the ants are established beforehand. It would only be a Deus Ex Machina if the ants were never established.
Not a but a basically an unrelated thing to the basically like the B plot solving the A plot, but the plots aren't. I don't know.
They have nothing to do with each other.
And also, there's nothing that anyone does that solves it. It's just the fact that they mention that they're trapped. I don't know. Anyway, the main story. I don't think this episode is like awful or unwatchable, but for BoJack standards, I think it's pretty low. It's an idiot plot. Yeah.
Well, I don't think the episode is bad. It's definitely my least favorite, but it reminds me a lot more of a season 1 episode where it's like they start with something relatively simple. I mean, the house falling underground is not a simple thing, but it's just one thing. And then it just keeps spiraling out of control and everything's going crazy. And, it reminds me of the Muffins episode, BoJack Hates the Troops, where it's like this small thing spirals out of control. And, it doesn't have a real resolution necessarily. The only part of this episode I thought was strong was BoJack and Diane getting drunk together, because Diane has her breakdown moment, which is really sad. But yeah, I couldn't follow the B plot at all. I thought that the person who voiced the queen was really hard to understand. I don't know. I'd have to watch it again.
That's RuPaul.
Oh,
I didn't even know it was RuPaul until I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page right now.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, and it just, I don't know. Like, it didn't seem like the whole thing later gets funnier with Woodchuck's hands getting destroyed. It becomes funnier later, but in this episode, it's not that funny. I mean, he doesn't even seem to be in pain. He just has pillows taped to his hand, and that's good enough, apparently. But yeah, you're right. The whole episode is to showcase Mr. Peanut Butter as being a bad leader, but we already knew that because he wasn't running for governor to be a leader. He just wanted people to like him. So, I mean, yeah, what was the point? I mean, the Zach Braff orgasming every time there's a shift in power was pretty funny.
That wasn't Zach Braff. That was just an extra.
It wasn't?
No, Zach Braff dies. That was just another guy. No, that was just an extra. That was running gag guy.
Okay, well, running gag orgasming guy was pretty funny. That was funny. So yeah, I wouldn't say this episode is bad, but it just, I mean, yeah, considering how strong the episodes have been up to this point, it just seemed like a strange diversion after the fact. And also the fact that nobody mentions it again afterwards. Nobody was like, hey, remember how that house fell underground and the ants moved it back up? Well, the only part that really mentions it is that Mr. Peanut Butter and Diane go to look for a new house.
Okay, so like I want to say that nothing happens in this episode, but technically speaking, this is also Diane gives BoJack the idea to do the whole mail in, like the parent consent form thing, which is obviously very important. But like, and the whole, Mr. Peanut Butter kind of realizing he's a bad leader, even though that doesn't really happen. I mean, yeah, it kind of happens this episode, but I guess the thing that it bugs me, it's an idiot plot. It's through and through everything, every step of the way. Mr. Peanut Butter doing the fracking in his own house and then not stopping it, and then when they're underground, the hip hip hooray thing, the food rations, just every single thing he does is just dumb. And what's worse is the fact that Woodchuck is there to point out just how, like, he's the voice of reason, but nobody listens to him. And this sort of thing can be funny, and I've seen it be funny, but when it's not funny, it's just frustrating. It's just like, okay, we get the idea. And then Mr. Peanut Butter is kind of indirectly responsible for the death of Zach Braff, but like, at no point does he really get any punishment. I mean, they almost eat him, but like, he does all of these horrible things that could have potentially led to everyone dying. He has he has good intentions, but he really shouldn't be a leader in any capacity. And it just kind of bugs me that nothing bad. I guess he loses his house, but like, does that matter when the money is just not an issue for like these rich characters? It's frustrating in that way. And it you mentioned it, but it's a foregone conclusion that Mr. Peanut Butter is a bad leader. We knew that. This wasn't a case of like, well, now let's see how he does in a small thing. It's like, no, we knew he was going to fail.
Yeah. Yeah, and they make a point of saying that all of them are celebrities, so someone will come get them. So why doesn't anyone come get them? They are right. They're all celebrities and rich people and everything, so why doesn't anyone come? Obviously somebody knew that they were going to the fundraiser, so why didn't they go to the place and be like, oh, the house fell underground, we should rescue these people? Why would only Woodchuck find them? I don't understand. Like, I don't know. There were so many questionable things about this episode.
Well, the line, Woodchuck mentions something about how it's just like really dangerous, and then the penguin guy mentions something about how thanks to the way the tunnels are laid out, the whole building could collapse. But it's I don't know. It does kind of feel like a season 1 episode, and it also, I mean, there's other things, like it feels kind of claustrophobic, and I get that that's part of the idea. BoJack being out of the story, basically being in his own story with Diane, like, that's cool, but like, also I feel like the main plot of this episode could have used more BoJack interfering, because otherwise it is just Mr. Peanut Butter and then like his evil manager, and then just a bunch of...
I still don't understand Katrina's deal. Even after the whole season, I don't understand her deal.
She was in the pocket of lobbyists.
I know, but why did she need Mr. Peanut Butter?
Yeah,
she hated him so much.
that's because he's enigmatic, I guess. But then why would she? Yeah, it doesn't make sense because she approaches him at the end of last season, but then in the beginning of the first episode, she kind of acts as if like he has no chance. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I don't understand.
Basically,
that's what I mean by saying I don't understand her deal. And then if she goes straight for Jessica Biel afterwards, after Mr. Peanut Butter drops out of the race to help Woodchuck. So why wouldn't she, if she needed someone who's charismatic? She's in LA, the land of charisma. She could have found anybody else. So why did she need Mr. Peanut Butter? I don't get it.
I think
don't get the governor's story. I'm not gonna lie. I don't get why it's important.
Well, we could talk about that when we talk about the next few episodes. But
yeah.
I think the underground is basically, it's kind of like the pivot, the what I would consider the worst like main story arc in the season, which is the governor arc, kind of reaching ahead here and hitting a point where it's just because it's the focus, you know. So yeah, and then from here things kind of start to deflate with it. So we can move on to the next episode if you're ready.
Yeah, let's do that.
So next it is The Judge, which is like so ominously titled, and then it's about judging booty.
No, it's not. It's not about judging booties.
Oh, sorry. It's about judging up-and-coming, respectable young women and their talents at bootying. Yeah, booties. So this episode, the main story is about how basically it's kind of like BoJack as a parent. It's like BoJack if he had a teen daughter and if she met a guy that he didn't like. And what's interesting about it is that he's not wrong, but he's also a jerk about it. And it's so cringy, but also like I can relate to the whole accidentally not really meaning to say something mean, but like you really shouldn't talk to a 17-year-old or really, I guess, anyone in the way that he talked to Hollyhock in this episode.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that with Sarah Lynn, who is not BoJack's real daughter, he treated her like his daughter. Like he treated her as his daughter surrogate kind of thing, and he kind of dumped his paternal instincts into her. So
but he was
I was
still bad
surprised
at
that he didn't do more of that with Hollyhock. Like I thought once he knew that maybe there was an inkling that she might be his daughter, that he would dump all of his paternal instincts into her again, and then fear that he was going to ruin her the way that he ruined Sarah Lynn. But it turned out he didn't do that at all. He was like super distant and mean to Hollyhock. And I don't know if it's just because he wanted to not do the same thing with Sarah Lynn, like the same thing that he did to Sarah Lynn, but they don't really specify, so it's hard to tell.
I mean, I think he's definitely coming from a good. I don't know.
Definitely what, sir?
I was gonna say he's definitely coming from a good place, but I don't even know because the way it's framed, it's kind of unclear as to why BoJack entirely thinks that this boy is gonna be bad for her, because he does. I mean, he says that okay, he's a teenage boy, he's in college, he's in Hollywood, he's just a bad trouble. But then he also kind of says that he wouldn't be interested in a girl like her, and then he makes the comments about her weight. So it is kind of unclear if he just doesn't want her to be dating, or if he doesn't want her to be dating him, or if I don't know. I think he's coming from a good place, but his intentions and stuff are mixed. Because you do also have to remember that Hollywood is a superficial place. He's not wrong in that it is superficial, it is vapid, it is very a tough place.
Mm-hmm.
But just the way he goes about parenting is just not ideal. But I mean, I wouldn't really expect anything more from BoJack.
Yeah. One thing I like about this episode too is one of the side stories is Princess Carolyn goes with Ralph to Ralph's family for some like mouse festival. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
But it's basically about hating cats, and all the mice in the Stilton family are like, yeah, cats suck. And what I like though is that despite their catism and despite the festival's mean-spirited to cats nature, they're still kind to Princess Carolyn. They still offer her things, they include her and stuff. And yeah, she's obviously not comfortable with it.
They do have that dig at the end. I don't know. I don't think I agree with you on that, because that the way I understand it is that it seems like they're just kind of doing the rich person thing of like, okay, we're going to tolerate you, but then kind of like say backhanded things.
They don't do that at the start. Mr. Stilton, big patriarch Stilton, he offers her all these things. Obviously, they're jokes about, being pregnant. You wouldn't want to do
which is great. It's hilarious.
It's funny,
like just the long string of things like eating shellfish and doing drugs and smoking and secondhand smoking and roller coasters.
Yeah, but the thing is that he doesn't know she's pregnant, so he's just offering her these nice things, and I never got the feeling they were doing it underhandedly, like they knew she was a cat and they invited her to this cat-hating ceremony because she's a cat and they hate cats. I just got the feeling that they wanted to include her, and they felt that this festival was worth sticking around for despite the catism thing. Because, I don't get the sense that their family are a big family of douchebags, like rich douchebags or anything like that. They say that, yeah, they could only tolerate her for the festival duration, but then Ralph says that, he's just like, well, I love her and we're going to have kittens or mice together and you can just live with that. And they don't go all like, oh, harum for anything like that. He just states, I'm going to be with her.
Well, the story kind of...
Then you're going to have to like it.
The story kind of ends at that point, though. I mean, I don't know. I definitely agree. They could have played these characters up as like really bad. I think what's kind of interesting is that the episode kind of plays with the whole, which is something that BoJack plays with a lot, of the whole like how important is a story, like what the story context of stories in real life, and it's like because Ralph's argument is basically like, well, it's just a story, and it's not we don't hate all cats, and it's something in the past and stuff. And it's like how hurt should she feel at this, because it's understandable why she'd be a little hurt, but maybe she is overreacting, maybe it is just a story, and maybe mice don't feel that way. Of course, it's the whole fantastic racism thing with animals in this world. It's interesting. I don't think it makes any hard statements on these things. I think it just kind of plays around with the thoughts of how hurt should you be by a story, how much does a story really represent how people feel.
Well, I mean, even though she's kind of annoying, whatever her name is, the female Stilton who runs the Girl Cruise website, she's still nice. She doesn't run her website for money. She seems to treat her employees well.
She hasn't fired Diane, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, is that the Stiltons, despite being an insanely rich family, and obviously based on the Hilton family, who are a family of dicks, it's nice to see a more even-handed representation of a rich family who may not necessarily be gigantic jerks. So it's nice. I kind of appreciate that. But you're not with the whole clown dentist thing.
Okay.
That started this episode, right?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
So Todd kind of pivots at this point. He realizes he doesn't have enough going on in the story. And it's because Mr. Peanutbutter is out of the race, so he also needs something to do. So they get the gang back together, and Todd's new idea is clown dentists. And with Todd's stupid ideas, I find they're funnier and better in one episode bursts instead of something that tries to drag on through the whole season. Like the cab driver thing last season, Cabracadabra, was also something that I found just kind of got less funny as it went on. Like, the whole idea is that they made a safe space for women, but then they just made it a place for guys to creep on girls. I
don't know. I think that's funny.
Well, it's like, I don't know. I think Todd's silliness works in more episodic things, whereas the clown dentist thing continues on, and it gets worse in the sense that it goes from Todd just having these creepy clown dentists to they've abducted someone's kid and they're drugging him, and he's just there getting dental work by these horrific clowns, to Todd releases them in the woods, to they get rabies and
turn into zombies, basically.
Yeah, it's supposed to be silly, and I'm not supposed to think about it too much, but I just kind of find it really callous and weird that Todd does this to his clown crew and just doesn't really seem to care about them. I don't know. I'm not supposed to care about these characters, but I ended up caring about the clown characters. Anyway, what did you think about the clowns?
I like the idea of it. I'm not gonna lie. And there's that one scene where Princess Carolyn comes into her house, and then they're working in the dark, and the clown's just like, ah! It's like, holy crap. As somebody who is not afraid of clowns, I don't really care about it. I'm actually more afraid of dentists than I am of clowns. So I do agree with you that it's not a plotline that's worth carrying over for 4 episodes. Yeah. Because they really only had one joke with it, in that they're clowns and they're dentists, and that's funny.
And this is all Todd gets to do for the rest of the season, by the way. That's the other thing too. Is not just that it's wacky, it's just that this is what he does. This is the last of it. He doesn't really come back into the as far as I'm remembering.
No, he doesn't come back. This is the last thing he does.
He helps Princess Carolyn with the clowns, and I liked that. I thought that was funny in the next episode. But otherwise, this is what he does.
Well,
yeah,
I do think certain aspects of it are funny, but I what bothers me more than the clown dentist story is the fact that Mr. Peanutbutter's governor story, which was hyped up as like the big driving force.
It was the first episode, first story.
Yeah, not just in the show itself, but on Twitter and Facebook. They that's all they were doing for weeks, was just this governor stuff. And it was like, oh, this is going to be a big thing. It just stops. It just grinds to a halt here. And I know Mr. Peanut Butter obviously is forgetful and scatterbrained, as evidenced by his spaghetti strainers thing in the 3rd season, which I think was a great running joke.
Oh yeah.
The payoff's going to be huge. But yeah, it's like they had this huge setup for it, and then it doesn't go anywhere. And then in the next episode, or maybe the episode following, it's like Katrina, she gets Jessica Biel to take Mr. Peanut Butter's place, and then Woodchuck Coodchuck won. So what was the point of that? So if everything just went back to the way they were in the beginning, what was the point of that? It didn't. The only foreseeable thing it changed, I don't know, maybe in the future they'll do more with it, but the only thing it changed was to create that bridge to Hawaii, so that they could have that scene in the last episode.
Well, I think I guess the answer would be that it's not about the presidency. It's not about the governorship. It was about Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter, and the fact that this drove a wedge through them. But I agree. I mean, I think one really easy solution is that instead of Beale becoming the new replacement candidate, make it someone obviously evil. Like we know that Beale is bad and Katrina is bad, and we know about the lobbyists, but we don't even actually see the lobbyists. She just mentions like, oh yeah, and I have powerful lobbyists that want to do bad things, and that's it. It's not a real tangible antagonist. If they had, and I wonder if they were going to do this, but then they felt like with Trump becoming president, it would look like a take that, even maybe if they didn't intend it to, if they had like a president or a governor character that comes in and is like, a bad person or something. Because it almost feels like that's what they're setting up, right? That they're setting up for a character to come in and be just like an obvious horrible person that, Kutchuk has to fight against, and then Mr. Peanut Butter and Diane have to help him out somehow. But instead it's Jessica Biel, who's ostensibly a joke character.
Beal with it.
Yeah, are you saying B-list or B-list? I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah. Well, the problem too with after Jessica Biel and Katrina lose the race for governor, they totally disappear from the story. I thought that Katrina was being hyped up as the new major antagonist of the series. Like there haven't really been any major antagonists, but the way she was, it just seemed like it seemed like, I don't know, maybe my brain is too steeped in really tropey cartoons, but I honestly thought the way it was going was Mr. Peanut Butter was going to lose his bid for governor, but Katrina, in her own crazy, strange, controlling way, was doing this to get him back. Like, she actually still really cared about him, but had no idea how to tell him. So this was her way of trying to get him back. But then that never happened. She just disappeared, and it was like,
that would have been a personal stake.
Yeah. It's like they had the way that she was sort of overtaking Mr. Peanut Butter's life, and the way that she was sort of shunting Diane out of it, was really indicating to me that she was trying to get back together with Mr. Peanut Butter, but then it just never happened. Yeah. It was like, oh, okay.
I guess.
What's the point then?
Yeah. It definitely fizzles out in a weird way. I think it is interesting, the thought of like after Peanut Butter decides he's out, that like send in someone who's worse and who has a chance of winning and stuff, and then that's like the true villain. But then that's Jessica Biel just doesn't fill that slot. It's a joke basically, and she's dealt with very quickly by avocado toast. So like, yeah. But I'm trying to think of like even what would be a suitable thought for like how to conclude that arc in a meaningful way, other than have Peanut Butter win. But then I don't know. I wouldn't want a season of that.
No, I wouldn't. I honestly, I didn't want to see that either. I would have been like, ugh.
Well, I was already.
I mean, they say that in an earlier episode where they're like his character on Mr. Peanut Butter's house became president, and he served for 6 months or something like that. And it's like, so that's already touted as a stupid idea. So please don't do that because it's a stupid idea.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of is if it would have been interesting if maybe a politician were to try to get into office that would have had a very personal vendetta against actors, like something that would affect Mr. Peanut Butter and maybe BoJack as well. And so that would give them something to fight against, because it really is just kind of like, okay, well, this party is bad because the person running is obviously clueless, and then there's just shady figures in the background. But we don't have a big threat of like we already got the stupid, baby vaping and all that stuff in the first episode. Like, you already lost if you're trying to make the world a better place. Anyway, and like I said in the other episode, he doesn't really get any punishment, Mr. Peanut Butter, aside from obviously it's hurting his marriage. Otherwise, there's no consequences. He ran for governorship on a completely empty platform. Encouraged fracking, did all this stuff. Okay, sure, his house gets destroyed, but by the end of the season, he has a new one. Like, it doesn't matter. Anyway, on to a much better, something much better.
Oh my god, this is one of my favorite episodes of anything.
Princess Carolyn
I
episodes.
Think that they could top this episode, but they did. But we'll get to that later.
Princess Carolyn episodes always get to me. In the first season, my favorite episode is the Princess Carolyn episode. I don't know why. I have nothing in common with her. I'm much more in common with like BoJack or Diane. But she's just such a lovable character, and unlike everyone else in the show, she really works hard all the time, and she really is always trying to do the best things to do. She's not a failure like BoJack, in that BoJack is just self-destructive and BoJack runs away from things. Princess Carolyn is a failure in that she almost tries so hard that she runs herself thin, and she beats herself up when she can't do something, which in this case is not in her control.
Yeah, well, oh my god, like, I love Princess Carolyn as a character. Again, I don't have much in common with her, except for when she explains that she came from very low class like she had a very low class upbringing. Her mother was a maid, and her ancestors were poor cats who sold off everything they owned just to survive and everything like that. But she still managed to make something of herself and become a great person who's strong and capable, and that really speaks to me because that's a lot of what I'm trying to do too. I came from kind of a low class, well, not kind of, I came from a very low class upbringing, and just somebody to see that working hard as you possibly can and dedicating your life to something will pay off eventually. It's nice for me to see. It's a comforting thought. But anyway, I love her so much that it hurts when they have an episode like this where the whole episode is just beating her into the ground. It's like, you want her to have a baby, you want her to be happy with Ralph, you want her agency or her management company to succeed, you want her necklace to be real gold, and then none of that happens, and it's just like, oh my god, no. And that point where she sits in her car and she just starts crying, I'm serious, like, I almost started crying too, and I almost never cry at cartoons because it just hurts so bad to see that. And this is another one of those episodes where the A plot is so incredibly strong that it just completely overshadows the B plot. The B plot's entirely inconsequential anyway. Yeah, it's literally just give me the paperwork, and then they don't get the paperwork.
No, it's just jokes about that.
Yeah.
Well, so okay. So the big thing, the first thing about this episode is that there's a framing device, and that it's a descendant of Princess Carolyn's telling the story. Now, in any other show, in most other shows, this is an indicator to the audience. Hey, look, everything's going to be okay. She is going to have kids, and obviously she has to because there's a descendant, and blah blah blah. But a show like BoJack, and I knew this was coming, but it still doesn't mean that it's bad. I knew they were going to subvert that. I know that they're showing us this not because, oh, it's proof that this is going to happen. It's proof that it's not going to happen. It's too good to be true. It hurt. Also, I've in one of my classes in college, I saw this episode of a show called it was like Moonlighting or something, some 80s show. Anyway, character ends up having a miscarriage, and the episode is being narrated from the point of view of the fetus. It's really weird. No, really bizarre, really trippy. But apparently my teacher told me that the only way they could do a miscarriage story was to do it in this weird, like, existential way. Anyway, point being, I've kind of seen this narrative trick be done before. That doesn't mean it's bad, just that I kind of knew it was coming. It still hit me at the end. It still hurts. Especially not just because it's like, here's this framing device, but because of why the framing device exists. It's a lie, but it's not like it's unrelated to the episode. There's a reason for it. It's a story that Princess Carolyn tells herself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also pretty much saw, I had hoped that it would be the more predictable outcome, but I knew in my head that it's BoJack, so it's not going to be with the framing device with Ruthie. Yeah. I was like, I really want this to be true, but I know it's not. The problem with the framing device, though, is that why would Princess Carolyn's imagination or know what's going on with BoJack's B plot?
Because it's not literal. Because it's
no, but she's imagining this. So,
but she's not. She's not beat for beat imagining the entire story. It's just I get what you're saying. I don't think it's as big a deal.
Yeah. But I also love the scene where where Princess Carolyn's talking about her ancestors and the like cat pictures, and that's great. Love cats singing. And that's awesome. So yeah, I mean, oh, god damn this episode. And when she fires Judah, it was like, don't fire Judah, please. I love Judah, and it's like, don't break up with Ralph. He's actually cool. Well, not cool, but he's like, I usually hate relationships in cartoons. They really bother me, but this is one of those ones where it's like, please don't. You guys were happy.
Yeah. It's just the what was I gonna say? The Judah thing. His explanation doesn't make any sense to me. Saying something like she needed time or whatever, but it's not like the deal was open and on the table. He made the decision for her. Mm-hmm. It's not like, I was going to tell you later. The decision was made. The whatever his name is, the lizard Charlie guy. Yeah. He already moved on to another deal. It's not like, I mean, I understand, and in every other way, Judah's been a above and beyond assistant. But I do think he was wrong on this one issue, and I think that if he had maybe played his cards a little better and was more apologetic and just straightforward with it instead of trying to make excuses and I think this was good for you, he could have kept his job. But it's still heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird how much I like Judah. I'm not sure why I do. I just really like him, and I hope he comes back. Like, I really, really do. Because if he had been there for 2 seasons and just disappears, it's like, well, what was the point then? I feel like they're building something up with him, but I'm not entirely sure yet.
Yeah. How about, I don't know, maybe a new personal assistant for BoJack? I'd like to see BoJack interact with them. That would be pretty funny.
Yeah, they have never really interacted. I think there was once where they did. Anyway. So, oh man. One episode to depress the shit out of you.
Well, so...
But it just keeps coming.
One of the telling things about this episode that I really like is Princess Carolyn's justification via the narrator of why she doesn't tell Ralph about how she saw how he's in this bliss of just having a baby and she couldn't ruin it for him. And I think, I think I think he was very right to be upset that not only did she not tell him about this, but she didn't tell him about other things, and she really wasn't willing to play ball and include him in this stuff that's crucial to his life. But you understand why. You see how she is. She's very take control of everything. She treats failure as something that she just needs to work harder at, but she just can't. Like, biologically, she's just not in a place where she can do that. And he was totally willing to talk about adoption or maybe, like, you know, in vitro or something, but she wouldn't accept failure, and that's ultimately what ended up ending the relationship.
Yeah. So I mean, man, if you want to watch an episode about someone becoming vulnerable,
yeah.
I mean, geez.
Oh, and the necklace is just like, it's just. Oh, it's just a sad icing on the cake. It's like, on top of everything else, it's such a great little visual metaphor for just everything else that happens in the episode of just,
yeah.
Like, by the way, it's worth nothing. Like, oh.
Yeah, it's like all the belief you had all this time, all the value you put into this object, and it's worthless. And it's like, oh God, no! Damn it! This is one of those episodes where it's just like everything sucks for everybody all the time, and all you want is for things to just be okay. But that's the point of the episode, is they're not okay, and you can't. It just hurts.
It's not
this
even
is one of those pain episodes where it just hits you right in the gut, and it hurts to watch.
Yeah, and it's not even like.
But obviously, it's great.
It's not even like the B plot's a happy one. It's silly, but it's not even. We don't even get a bone in that area. BoJack gets denied,
and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's tough too, because through the whole thing we're promised a happy ending and it doesn't come. But I will say, even though it's not a steep upward, trajectory, things do get better for her. She's not beaten down at the end of the season. She gets a little bit of hope. She takes licking and keeps on ticking, literally.
Yeah.
Anyway, you ready to loving that Cali lifestyle?
Yep.
I'm just now seeing some of these episode titles, because when you watch on Netflix, it just keeps playing. I guess that Cali lifestyle is eating disorder.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not her fault.
No, but just the Cali lifestyle is. I guess that's what that's referring to.
I guess so.
Yeah. So this episode kind of brings a number of different plot lines, not together, but just kind of touches on each one of them and kind of gears things up for the next episode, which only is about one, and then the finale, which kind of closes everything. But this episode concludes the whole governor race. It also talks about the Hollyhock passing out and being drugged. And then there's the clowns helping Princess Carolyn. Of these stories, I mean, Hollyhock's, I think, is the most interesting, because you see her pass out at the beginning and you don't know why. I mean, I was thinking that at first I was like, is she schizophrenic? Like, oh no, like what runs in BoJack's family that could be like awful for her? That, is she suffering from dementia now? Like, oh no. Honestly, the end result is probably happier than I was expecting. The fact that she was just temporarily drugged with just weight loss pills, which are bad, but not like as bad as it could have been. But yeah, I mean, that's like a great teaser to include at the beginning of the episode and then not get to at the end. I don't know, which one of these do you want to talk about first?
I was actually just gonna say what I thought happened with Hollyhock in the beginning. Is like when I saw the episode title, "Loving That Cali Lifestyle," I was like, oh God, no, she's addicted to drugs. Some drugs. It's like she maybe took BoJack's drugs, or maybe she got offered
BoJack
drugs by that intern, and now she's addicted to it. And it's just like, oh, please don't. It was like right after coming off of Ruthie. It's like, please don't do this. Don't do me like this. But then obviously it turned out to not be that, which was better. I mean, still bad, but better. I mean, this is really to the point where the governor story completely disappears and nobody cares anymore. So let's just not talk about that, because I do not care.
We already kind of did. Yeah.
Princess Carolyn here, it just sort of continues her downward spiral, and when she sees a TV pitch for a show that's called Filbert, which is the name she was going to give her potential baby with Ralph, and so she grows attached to it and wants Turtletaub to get it made. But all the while she's completely sloshed the entire time because she had such a miserable time. So it's harder than usual because she's so drunk. So
I think this was my favorite part of the clowns. I think they worked here.
Yeah, the shenanigans. When you put the shenanigans into it, then it's actually funny. When it's just they're clown dentists and that's supposed to be funny, that's when it's not funny.
Yeah. I like that. I like the fact that Princess Carolyn flying through the air is seen on one of the CNN clips, because the episode, basically all the events in the episode take place at the same time, all the different stories. It doesn't actually really matter for much of anything. It didn't really have to be this way. I don't believe. I guess it was just a way to include the teaser for BoJack's story at the beginning and then not follow up on it till the end. But anyway, you see her flying through the air in one clip in the governor storyline. So, and then you don't know why until later.
I know. I was like, what was that, Princess Carolyn? Am I drunk? Am I drugged? What? And it's like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I understand.
Yeah. Also, the last time Todd really gets to do anything with anyone else. Anyone else important anyway. And then BoJack's story. Also, at this point, BoJack doesn't really know that it was the coffee. Or he does at the very end. But at first he assumes that it's his drugs that she got into. And I think that's pretty good of BoJack to basically take responsibility for this, even though ultimately it's not really his fault. Well, it's not his fault at all. The fact that he's willing to own up to his mistake, I think, is kind of a big deal compared to his previous mistakes. And I think that in turn he's rewarded in the fact that it wasn't his fault. It's like his karma for wanting to take the blame is that he didn't really do it. This is also the episode that introduces us to Holly's 8 dads. Which what I wanted to say about this was, what I like about this show is that they do impose a lot of kind of like social justice-y liberal stuff. But they're willing to make fun of it as well. You see a lot of shows that they'll tackle LGBT issues, but they treat it like you can't make fun of the gay character. Like that's just off limits. These people have been through enough. Like we can't do that. And in doing so, you make the characters kind of insufferable and unrealistic because they're put on a pedestal. In this, it's like they can make fun of the fact that. Sorry, my cat was headbutting me. I don't know what do you want, Sadie? Okay, anyway, they make fun of the fact that she has 8 last names, which is just inherently funny. Like, and they're all silly names, and then they do jokes about how they have their own language and how hi kitty, they have their own language and how they're all sassy and stuff that I think they include it, but they make jokes about it, and so it feels more natural than trying to shoehorn it into some other shows. You know
what I like?
I'm sorry.
About them? You know what I like?
What?
Is that they're good dads. They're being gay is sort of secondary to the fact that they're good dads. And they care about Hollyhock. They're not just like, oh my god, Hollyhock's in hospital, anything like that. They're legitimately caring fathers, despite the fact that their existence literally is just there to be funny.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's there to just be funny. I think it's there to be funny and to also just, to just show the world as they want to. But yeah, and I think it also creates, from like a narrative perspective, just a real way to overwhelm BoJack. Because if it was one parent or 2 parents that showed up and were worried, that would be one thing. But the fact that it's literally a gang of people that are out to are blaming BoJack for this and are mad at him, just really, I wish I could have seen his internal monologue at that moment, because I would have been just not feeling great. So I think it's cool. I think it's different. I like the fact that they didn't really show them. There's like Hollyhock has pictures of them in earlier episodes, but they don't really show them until now. And Quackers is great.
Thank you.
It's just the silly, and they all have their own silly gimmicks. Like when it's fun's early, but I'm cool, so they all call me the Iceman. I also thought it was interesting that that BoJack didn't see her, and he doesn't get to interact with her until the very end of the season. It's like one of those things that's unsatisfying from a narrative perspective because you really want BoJack to be able to talk to her, but it makes the story more realistic and more interesting because, yeah, I don't think they would let him talk to her, and it's more interesting to just kind of have this gap where we don't really know entirely what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
And it allows the story to shift back to BoJack's mother for the next episode.
Which is a good segue into the next episode.
Yes. All right. Time's arrow.
Whoops, sorry.
No, you're good.
So, yeah, this episode is about BoJack finally snapping with his mother and driving her to take her to the worst place he can possibly take her. The worst retirement place possible. Yeah. But Beatrice gets lost in her memories, which, hoo boy.
Yeah, wow.
That's all I can say is hoo boy.
I mean, it's, you know, there have been shows that have tried to convey basically a whole character's life in one episode. And some shows have done it successfully, others have not. I really like A Tale of Two Stands, for one. But, you know, it's hard to fit all of that stuff in one episode time-wise, but also it's tough to make it kind of be thematically relevant. You know, like you have to have a story, basically, or at least show vignettes that have their own stories for it to feel satisfying and not just here's a bunch of random clips of someone's life. But instead, what we see here are the crucial moments that make her the person that we've known and the person that we didn't really get to meet. We bridge the gap between the second episode and where she's at now. And the narrative device of the fact that basically her memory is not great and that she's senile and she's clearly going through something mentally is a great way to show it, is a great way to have just these things about it that make it even creepier, that make it even more disturbing. I mean, it's already pretty disturbing subject matter. Her mother was lobotomized. You know, she gets pregnant after a one-night stand and basically has no choice but to keep the baby, marries someone who's abusive and horrible. And it is a horrifying story, but then add the neat little narrative tricks they do to convey certain things. And you have a really fantastic episode.
Yeah, just I'm not gonna lie, like this episode was downright scary at times.
Yeah.
Like not just emotionally, but visually scary. When the scene changes from old Beatrice to younger Beatrice, and then it pans over to what she thinks of Henrietta, like the way she visualizes her and her face is all scratched out. I actually was like, oh my, like I literally, like my heart skipped a beat. It was that. I would never have expected to see something like that in this cartoon. It was so like gut punching and just
it's different. Like it basically is like you had a picture of someone and you just crossed it out.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that you never actually get to see her face, I think is great. Like Beatrice doesn't remember what her face is, so how can it just come back all of a sudden? It's gone forever. So she remembers everything about the situation, but she doesn't remember Beatrice's or Henrietta's face because I guess to her maybe it just wasn't important. But
well, I sorry.
I'm just gonna say is that the story is so well paced despite the way it's presented. You know, in sort of this fractured kind of jumping all over the place kind of narrative. That's, I mean, man, is that a hard thing to do when you have a narrative jumping all over the place? And you need to establish a whole bunch of stuff in such a short amount of time. But the biggest, most epic praise I can heap onto this episode is that it fully humanizes Beatrice as a tragic character who, like BoJack, is a product of her upbringing, who tries to not make the same mistakes as her mother and pay the ultimate price for it. And just, oh, God, like... the results of her actions in trying not to make the same mistakes as her mother, she ends up making the same mistakes, but sort of like, or it's the same mistake, but sort of like the photo negative of those mistakes, in that she was so cold and distant to her family that it fell apart anyway. You know,
Yeah.
it wasn't
I mean,
it wasn't like, you know, with her parents and her brother Crackerjack, it's like she had no control over him being taken away from them because he died in the war. But in her family, everything was taken away from her because she had too much control over it. You know, like she
Yeah.
pushed everybody away to not have them be taken away. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can kind of, you know, postulate about the show from this episode. But I think maybe one of the things is that, and one of the reasons why Henrietta's scratched out is because throughout Bee's life, a number of scarring incidents have happened, just like in BoJack's life, a number of scarring incidents have happened. And I think maybe the show is trying to say something about how, like, Henrietta was kind of the most recent bad thing to happen to her, and that's why she's scratched out, and she blames Henrietta for all these things, and maybe it's just more of one of those things where, you know, life is going to throw bad things at everyone. No one has a great life. Like, no one's been completely free of suffering or strife. It's just, do you let those big events in your life ruin you? Do you blame them? Do you ruminate on them? And I think that's what BoJack does a lot. Instead of trying to be a better person for today, instead of doing the times arrow marching onwards, BoJack tries to think about what he could have done better for the actress girl.
Sarah Lynn?
Sarah Lynn, yeah. What you know, what he could have done better for Sarah Lynn. He could have been a better parent. He could have been a better parent. It's like, well, just stop thinking. You can't do anything now. Why don't you treat the people in your life that are in your life now better? Like BoJack, I think he's stuck, and I think that Bee has the same problem in that she's stuck on the bad things. She blames BoJack's birth for years. For years, she blames his birth. Even when she's living a better life, she still blames his birth as the thing that ruined her. And then she blames Henrietta, and the fact that she's in her senility blaming Henrietta for all these things. You know, it's like you can be that person that chooses to blame and just ruminate and let it ruin you, or you can have these bad things happen and then move on and treat everyone else better in the future, despite the fact that bad things have happened.
Yeah. Well, what I love too about this episode is it gives Beatrice's behavior much more context. You know, they sort of try to get this going in the second episode by showing that she's not just a flaming Cruella de Vil-esque bitch the whole time, is that she has reasons for her behavior. But this one, what I love about it is that not only does it give it context, but it at no time tries to attempt to justify her behavior. It's like the way when they show her and BoJack riding towards Butterscotch's funeral. You know, it's like this scene where they could have been like, oh, let's have Beatrice be all sad about Butterscotch's death and, you know, everything like that. But no, they just show her continuing to be horrible to BoJack. So they had an opportunity to try and make it like, oh, it's not her fault, and everything like that. But it actually kind of echoes the second to last episode from the third season, in that it's not the alcohol or the drugs or the sex, it's you. So it's the same thing with Beatrice. It's not the lobotomy, it's not the losing your brother, it's not the going with the wrong man, it's you. Yeah. You know, it's that kind of thing. So I just, oh man, like there's so many layers to pick apart.
I know.
We could talk about it for hours.
One of the things that the season kind of refers to it, BoJack refers to it as the poison that's inside him, that's inside Holly, that's inside his mother. He kind of refers to that, and it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can kind of try to figure out what the show is trying to say about certain things, but it's like, is there something wrong biologically with BoJack's family, or is it just that just bad things have continuously happened? But it's like a nature and nurture and both and neither, and it's interesting. And I think, one of the cool things about this is that I think where a lot of like backstories go wrong is that they try to do like one event that defined the character and everything was different from that one event. But this one, it's not that. It's like the lobotomy, I mean, losing her brother first and foremost. We don't really see too much about how she feels about that, but you know, we can assume that it's not good. You know, her mother getting lobotomized, her father being car accident, her father being awful to her, Scarlet, her bullies, the Scarlet Fever, like she just has a number of bad things. It's not, she blames BoJack for a lot of things, but like it's just a lot of things that have happened in her life.
That's what I'm saying. It's not this or that or whatever. It's you.
Yeah. And it's a complex picture of who she is instead of just trying to be one specific tragic backstory of like, I was a winner until this one thing happened.
Yeah. And that's why I always hate that cop out where it's like, I had a massively good life until my wife / child and wife died. And it's just like, you know, it's not like you lose your, okay, that's actually really insensitive of me to say. You could totally lose your entire life if your wife and or child died or was taken away from you or something like that. But yeah, it's like life is life. Life is like a big, it's like a big puzzle, and maybe in it's, you know, some of the pieces you add, maybe they don't fit, maybe they're in a different puzzle or something like that. But yeah, it's not like you put the one piece in and all of a sudden the puzzle makes sense. You know, it takes more than one puzzle piece for a puzzle to make sense.
Yeah. So speaking of puzzles, this is also the big reveal of Hollyhock, that she's not BoJack's daughter. That's
right, which I'm actually extremely happy that she was not BoJack's daughter. I felt like they might possibly have been going for that at the start, but I wasn't gonna like get myself too excited for that, because if she did turn out to be his daughter, then I would have been like, ugh. But I think that her being his daughter would have taken too much focus away from future episodes where it would have been like, oh, this is gonna be a whole thing, isn't it? And I feel like it's better to have been a whole thing for one season and then to move on with it. And I like the idea that BoJack can love someone who is not related to him. Oh, you know, is not like strongly related to him by blood, so they can be friends, but also family. You know, like he has friends and he has family, and his friends all try to support him, but he pushes them away, and his family hates him, so he pushes them away too. But this is someone who kind of falls in between of that, a family and a friend, who's someone who he can genuinely care about without worrying about, you know, having sex with her like Sarah Lynn, or hating her like Beatrice.
Yeah, I think it's a much more interesting relationship to have her be an adopted, well, not an adopted, a step sibling half a sibling who he didn't grow up with, because I mean, if she was actually his daughter, it seems too important to, like, you're right, to not focus on next season as well, but then it'd be annoying to she just become the focus of the show. It also feels like kind of a cop-out of like, all BoJack ever needed was a daughter, and now he's found all, you know, like he can siphon all of his good vibes through her, and it would feel like a cop-out. Whereas a stepsister, I keep saying step, but a sister, let's just say sister.
She's his half-sister, because they have the same father. So
right, but sister either way. You know, it's less of a strong connection. So, and she's not his responsibility. She's someone who, if he wants to care about her, he has the choice to. Whereas with a child, of course you have the choice to be a horrible person, but you feel a lot more morally obligated to. Whereas BoJack seemed to genuinely care about her at the end. It wasn't like, it didn't feel like he had to at that point. Plus, like she said, she already has dads, so this is a new experience for her too. I didn't see it coming, and it's a twist that makes sense. It's not a hokey, like, I don't know.
Yeah, like, I know what you mean. Like,
he was a sperm donor once, but the sperm got mixed up, and we don't know if, like, they could have done something weird.
You mean like with Archer?
Don't.
Yeah, I love that, where it's like they, at the end of the 5th season, it's like, oh my god, Archer's got a daughter now. How's this going to change things? And then it just doesn't do anything. Like they're just like, yeah, she's there, and let's just move on.
BoJack is a much better show than Archer. I love Archer, but BoJack's just on another level.
Yeah. BoJack's been trending steadily upwards, whereas Archer has been trending steadily downwards.
Yeah.
Like, very, very sharp downwards.
BoJack's also developed with a story arc format in mind. So it helps to when your show's developed with that in mind versus kind of like slowly sliding into that can be very different. But anyway, yeah, great twist. Probably the biggest twist in the show so far.
Yeah, for sure. Like I would never. I'm actually really good at guessing when things are going to happen with plots and stuff. I guess again because my mind is so steeped in tropes and everything like that. But yeah, I not for a second guessed what was going on. I had no idea what was going on, and when it became clear, it was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god! Like my brain exploded.
What's interesting is that in the next episode, the reveal, like the way BoJack figures it out is stupid, and they lampshade how stupid it is. But like this is the reveal to the audience, so it doesn't really matter that BoJack's discovery is kind of through like a stupid loophole, and then whatever. Like this is the real reveal, and it's like the show doesn't tell you. It's just like you slowly
gotta
see
figure it out on your own.
Yeah, like hey, there's some unpleasantness. Henrietta's pregnant, and yeah.
You basically the pieces are there. You just got to put them together.
Yeah, and yeah, like the clues were all throughout too. There were clues. So, but
they weren't like, hey, look at this. None of them were Chekhov's guns, basically.
Yeah.
They were sort of more like Chekhov's concealed weapon. It was like they are there, but you gotta open the trench coat a bit to see it.
Chekhov's senile parent who you're not entirely sure if they're speaking straight or not.
Chekhov's senile parent. That's great.
All right, Sol. What time is it right now?
What time is it now? It is 9:24 p.m. Just kidding.
So yeah, this is kind of where BoJack himself figures out that she's his sister. And she gives him the information. He finds out where Henrietta is through some more awesome like anxiety vision. There's that. Princess Carolyn.
My superpower is anxiety vision.
Princess Carolyn does her pitch, and the what time is it right now? People seem to like it. She also goes through with signing BoJack's name and basically signing him onto the project. Which good for her, honestly, after all this stuff that she's done for BoJack over the years, doing this one selfish thing, is good. And I think it's going to be interesting for next season. Also, do you think Princess Carolyn and BoJack gonna get back together? Do you think?
I have no idea. I would appreciate if they didn't, to be honest, because BoJack has burned Princess Carolyn so many times, and she has done nothing but support him and help him and be there for him, and he doesn't deserve her back. Like she is far too good for BoJack.
I agree. It's just that the way their last interaction was framed kind of seemed like there was something, but honestly, I'd really like it if instead they just got really close, because they have a lot in common,
friends, but not in a relationship.
No,
because it's like when Princess Carolyn is just sitting in his bed in that flashback, and she's like, "Don't you break my heart, BoJack Horseman," and that's all he does is break her heart, and it's just like, okay, well, enough is enough. It's time to stop with that.
So, okay. So then this is like the clown thing. Like, I think it just gets the dumbest here is that Todd releases the clowns out in the woods because they didn't get a favorable. The Better Business Bureau shut them down. Todd releases them in the woods, and then they get rabies, and then they're zombies, and then Todd's idea is to team up with a Better Business Bureau lady who also may or may not be asexual, and do a run. Right? It's like a exercise business now. It's also like one of those things where stupid Todd plots are not the idea for the finale, like the last episode. Like, do something meaningful with Todd in the last episode. This was not meaningful. This was, I don't know.
I don't even know what this was.
This was rabid clown
it's another one of those
zombies.
things where it's like it starts with something simple and then it just totally spirals out of control. But here it's more on a small scale because it's just one piece of the story. And yeah, I have to admit the resolution of it is just it's not funny.
Yeah. And Todd doesn't get to interact with like any of their characters.
I know.
Like I don't know. But
he doesn't learn, he doesn't go like he sort of starts the whole Hollyhock and BoJack story and he gets no resolution on that. Like he's not even part of it anymore.
Yeah. I would like next season to see some sort of relationship building with Todd and BoJack. Like, not that they're just like suddenly friends again or something, or suddenly great, but I'd like to see something like interesting where they I don't know, where they go to like a couples retreat and they have to do trust exercises or like something silly. Like,
you know what would be a good idea actually? To do an episode like the one with BoJack and Princess Carolyn where they're at his restaurant and he's gonna fire her, but with Todd, where he confronts Todd, where Todd confronts him about. And so in a bid to make himself better, BoJack like takes Todd out to a nice fancy restaurant or something, like not copied the exact same thing, but I just saying like takes him somewhere nice and public and Todd just spends the entire episode just confronting him about the whole thing. But at the end, because of how good Todd is of a person Todd is, he says, you know, like I don't know if we can ever be like we were before, but I think it would be better to I like liking you more than hating you, you know, that sort of thing. So there's nothing different, but it's there.
Or how about another one that from Todd's perspective, but where BoJack is suddenly like really nice to him, and Todd's wondering if there's like some ulterior motive. Like, I think that would be pretty interesting. But anyway, so that's Todd's wrap up. And then the last one would be Diane and Mr. Peanutbutter. So I'm gonna say I think Diane and Mr. Peanutbutter do a better job at what Beth and Jerry tried to do with them on Rick and Morty, in that I think they have a realistic bad relationship, in that instead of it being a case where they fight and then they have some sort of like epiphany moment of like, oh my God, we're actually perfect for each other. Yeah, no, I know. We're you know, okay, we hate each other, but then in this virtual reality we're meant to be together, or you know,
or
you do
potatoes.
Yeah, like one heroic thing in a kitchen back room and suddenly you're my hero again.
Well, keep in mind that those were different versions of Beth and Jerry, but whatever, that's off topic.
Well, no, but the what I'm trying to say is, in that show they pull the trope of like they fight and fight and fight, and then at the end of the episode there's like a cliche thing that keeps them together. In some episodes. No,
they do it like 4 times.
Yeah. This one doesn't. This show doesn't do that. This show they Mr. Peanutbutter and Diane fight and fight and fight. They go to therapy. They have, you know, vicious
angry sex.
Yeah, instead of actually resolving, and then they just kind of make do with the relationship. They don't say like, "Oh wow, we're actually perfect for each other because of this one contrived thing." They just kind of go on with the relationship, and here it finally breaks down. And I don't see them getting anything but a divorce next season.
Yeah. Well, so the whole thing about them going spontaneously to Hawaii and then just coming back was like, okay, that was weird. But I love the scene where they're looking at the house in VR, where they're yelling at each other and like tripping over each other. And Mr. Peanutbutter's like, I gotta go to the bathroom. And he's like, that's not how it works. That was great. It's sort of like their story is bookended with 2 really good scenes, but the whole middle part is like, what was the point of that? But
I think it was
Diane she's like, she realizes that this isn't gonna work between her and Mr. Peanutbutter, and she just breaks down and starts crying, and it's like, oh God, stop doing that, it's too sad. Mr. Peanutbutter's point about how he feels like Diane isn't committed to him, and now he feels like she's just a guest to him, where, you know, nothing of hers is in their place of living. Like, she lives with him, but they don't live together, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, when he says like, I wanted a part of this home to be just yours so that you don't feel like a guest in my house, and she's so ungrateful towards him, that actually really bothered me. I was like, he did all this for you, and yeah, it's already been established that you don't like big grand you know, gestures and everything, but he did this for you to show you how much he loves you, and all you do is throw it back in his face. And that just really pissed me off. But then seeing like Diane realize that you know, this isn't gonna work, and she gets so sad and everything. It kind of made it a little bit better. But when it was like, you got what you wanted, you got your dream, and you still aren't happy. It's like with BoJack, I get it, but with you, like, come on. She didn't even say thank you to him.
Yeah.
Really bothered me, actually.
Honestly, I think the whole relationship issues are mostly on Diane. Not that Mr. Peanut Butter doesn't do things wrong. He does things wrong a lot, but I think Diane is self-aware enough to know, and she did from the start, that this was never going to work. There's no way. She is on a different level than Mr. Peanut Butter. She thinks about issues differently from him. She processes the world in a way that is fundamentally different from the way he does, and it was never going to work. And she should have known. He's not the type to know, and he's the type to do a grand gesture to try to fix things. And again, on a weaker show, that would have worked. But I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think it is an interesting portrayal of a marriage that really wasn't meant to work in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I don't like to tell anyone how to do things, but the way I would picture the ending being the exact same way, but playing out slightly differently to lead to a more satisfying conclusion for Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter's story would be if she looked at the library, and just didn't say anything for maybe like 4 seconds or something. And then she says thank you, but then she starts crying, like, as she's saying thank you. And Mr. Peanut Butter's like, what's going on? And then she explains to him why she doesn't like it, instead of just reacting like, oh my god, I didn't want this. You took my dream away from me. You're a bastard. You know, that sort of thing. That if her reaction had been retooled very, very slightly, I would not have reacted with like, what are you doing? Why are you being such a horrible person to this dog man who obviously cares about you? So yeah, if her reaction had just been slightly different, I wouldn't have been so meh about the whole thing.
I get you.
Yeah. Princess Carolyn's story with trying to get Filbert greenlit, though, I think the whole clock website thing's a little bit strange. But you know what the real thing about season 5 that I'm probably gonna expect is because nobody actually read the script to Filbert, so the show is gonna be terrible, and it's gonna not even get past the pilot episode, and everything's gonna fall apart again.
Well, that's I mean, they left a lot open for next season. So the last thing we didn't mention was just that BoJack and Hollyhock talk on the phone, and she's gonna go see her mother. And BoJack wants to help in any way he can, but she doesn't really need any help.
Which is nice. It doesn't end on a super depressing note.
This is the first. I think that's also why Mr. Peanut Butter and Diane's was a little more justified, is because everyone else got. I mean, Todd got a happy ending, I guess. Princess Carolyn's.
I really hope he doesn't get in a relationship with the jellyfish girl, because I don't want they did a good job highlighting the asexual angle, but I don't want them to beat it into the ground.
Well, it seems like
he's Todd. He needs to be an entity unto himself.
It seems like it would be a waste to have a character come out as asexual and then just to have them start dating. Like, I know, as they explain in the show, asexual people date and all that, but it's just kind of like one of those weird things where, like, why you have the opportunity to have a character who doesn't date. Why waste it? Why give him another cliche, here's a relationship story, unless they want to tell us something interesting about the story. But yeah, and nothing about that character. Was she a jellyfish? I couldn't even tell.
I think some sort of creature.
I thought she was like an amoeba or something.
Well, an amoeba is not an animal, so I don't think so.
Well,
no, I think she's a jellyfish.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I just couldn't entirely tell. Yeah,
she's got tentacles.
Yeah, but was it? I don't know. Anyway,
whatever. It's not important.
Relative to everything else, everyone had a happier ending. Princess Carolyn's not so much in the grand scheme of the season, but definitely a you know, she's not at nothing. She has something here. So having Mr. Peanut Butter and Diane have the sad ending works. But yeah, next season, I mean, they set up that they could do a lot of things. Like, where would you take Mr. Peanut Butter's character if he's single and now he's on his his third ex-wife? Like, you got to imagine he's going to be going through something. You know, where's Diane going to go? Is Diane going to try to have a relationship with BoJack? Like, that's not going to work out well.
No, because they'll just feed into each other's negativity and create a gigantic. I was gonna say hurricane, but let's not use the word hurricane. It's a gigantic monsoon of horribleness because they are horrible for each other.
Yeah, it'll be a fracking mess. But I mean, it'd still be interesting. I don't, because it'll be the first time in the show when pretty much they'd both be single.
Yeah, they've been together since the beginning.
So that would be interesting. Yeah, and what they do with Hollyhock's character, because she could be a character who appears in, half the episodes. She could appear in one episode. She could appear in no episodes.
She's not essential to the plot.
Right. And then where does this Filbert story take BoJack? And what does BoJack turn to next to try to fill the void in his life? Because every season it's like he turns to something. This time he kind of turned to family and kind of bit him a bit. In terms of his mom, not so much with Hollyhock. But yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of potential going forward.
I think his mother's gonna die next season. She had her story explained. She's at the end of her rope. So what else is there to do with her? Well, I think she's gonna have a big confrontation with BoJack, and I think she's gonna die.
I don't know. I feel like as much of a big deal as was made about her this season, I don't know where you really go with her character. So if I could see her dying in between seasons or like in the first episode or something. So maybe. Or she's just going to live to be like 150 or something.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is the way they've sort of resolved her character and they've given context to her actions, it's pretty much time to let her go. To kill her.
I mean, yeah.
Well, not to kill her, to let her die.
Yeah, or anything that gets her off the show anyway.
But I'm very optimistic for season 5, even though I think everything's going to fall apart again, as is wont to do with this series. Obviously, I'm waiting on pins and needles to find out what happens next.
Yeah, as long as just don't go into anything like Trump related, because the governor storyline wasn't the best in general, and then trying to do the whole Trump thing on top of that.
Yeah, I would say in terms of like hierarchy of stories, starting from worst to best, it would have to be, so Todd's clown dentist is the worst. Todd's asexuality is slightly above that. Mr. Peanut Butter's governor story. God, they're all so good. I would say just the BoJack and Hollyhock story on its own, without the mother part, just the Hollyhock, and then Princess Carolyn's pregnancy, Ralph Judah story, and then Beatrice's story.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider Todd's asexuality to be really an arc. Although I guess if you're considering jellyfish, whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would only consider it a one episode sort of thing, but then they bring it back for the last episode.
Not that it's not a one episode thing, but just that it's more of like a character trait than a specific arc that he's going through. But maybe I don't know. I don't know how you classify that.
Oh, and I forgot. Let's put Diane's whole girl cruise story. I would put that maybe between the clown dentists and the asexuality thing.
Yeah, she kind of gets shafted this season, to be honest, focus wise. Because I mean, her whole thing at the blog, it's not bad. It's just it doesn't
really go anywhere.
It's the stuff she's been doing where she'll stick her head into some controversial issue and she'll be upset that everyone else is kind of vapid and cares about stupid things. Her arc was more about in relation to Mr. Peanut Butter. So in general, season 4 thoughts. What do you got?
Though there are a couple story threads that really just go nowhere at all and were generally unsatisfying, the parts that are good are so damn good that it just hurts. Like this season left me in pain, but like paroxysms of joyful pain. And I couldn't imagine it being better than season 3, but it was. It was.
Yeah.
Most of the aspects of the season were better than season 3, and it just, oh man. Despite a couple of dangling plot threads, I think that it is just astoundingly good.
And we talked about like the negatives and stuff like that, but it's only because it's more interesting to talk about that. Like I think in general, and even in some of like the story arcs that I wasn't crazy about, there's still good jokes in there. There's still good parts of some of these episodes and stuff.
like anything we say negative is only negative in comparison to BoJack.
Yeah.
You know, in comparison to other shows, it's still like the grand poop throne of forever, or you know what I'm trying to say is great.
Yeah,
Grand
yeah.
poop throne. What the hell am I talking about?
Yeah. So something about season 4 in general is the running gags. I mean, they continue some from previous seasons, like the tongue twister stuff, but they also included Todd's clothes after he becomes a fashion model for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just like a classy thing, and people in the background are just wearing the clothes. It's great. And then my favorite running gag was Diane's chair at Girl Cruise. Every time we see her, it's a different stupid experimental chair that she cannot sit in. She falls out of it every time.
Yeah, like the one where they're hanging upside down.
Yeah.
It's not even a chair.
Yep. Such a great thing, and it's never even really commented on. I don't think she actually even says anything about it. It's just a thing.
Yeah, nobody talks about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, so let's see what else.
Well, what would you say your season 4 thoughts in general?
Oh, I mean, well, that was one. I think the thesis of the season and kind of the core lies in the whole Time's Arrow quote. How you choose to interpret that is, I'm sure there's a number of ways you can do it, but I think the fact that it shows up in the second episode and the second to last episode. By the way, I love the symmetry on that. How it's the second episode and the second to last one that are the two that are related to BoJack's mother. The fact that it's the title of the second to last episode, I think is kind of important, and I think, it's true. There's nothing that BoJack can do to some of the stuff that happened in his past. To the people that are dead, there's nothing he can do. Even the people that aren't dead, some of the stuff that he's done, he can't undo. And I think that's true of all the characters, I guess. But yeah, I think that's interesting. It's an interesting quote, and I'll remember it because of the stupid joke about the arrows don't march; they don't have legs.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I've said all I needed to say at this point at 2 videos, and I think I'm all praised out.
Yeah, I'm good too. Yeah,
basically, let's just end this off by saying, if you haven't already watched BoJack Horseman, I don't even know why you'd be watching this video if you hadn't, but if you have not, please just watch it. It is worth your time.
Yeah. It's a show that I think kind of gets better every season, and I don't know. I'd be hard pressed to say that any given episode is bad. It's a powerful, interesting show, and it really subverts a lot of things. Even shows that claim that they subvert a lot of things, and shows that do subvert, a lot of things. BoJack subverts more things than that, and BoJack really, if you've ever studied media, if you ever studied stories and are used to stories, BoJack is a show that can still manage to surprise you somehow, and turns a lot of stuff that you'll find familiar on its head.
Yeah, but of course, if you want to watch a show that makes you happy and gleeful, and everything is just light and fun, and makes you laugh, don't watch this show. You will just come out really depressed in the end. Depressed but satisfied, although it depends.
Just watch Horsing Around then.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that was one thing I actually wanted to mention, is I like that BoJack kept his Horsing Around shirt, and it doesn't fit him anymore.
Yeah, his fat belly falls out of it.
Yeah, I like that. It was just a nice little touch.
Yep. All right, well, thank you very much for being a part of this discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was super fun that I was able to actually elaborate on this and be allowed to go on big rant.
Any plugs aside from your mini Monday on BoJack?
Not really. I mean, I just did this for fun, not really for, self-promotion or anything like that. But I would say if you want to see just a sort of summation of the season in like 7 minutes, my mini Mondays is there. And
you reviewed BoJack too, right?
I did, yeah. Back in February. The first part of the video is dumb, but I think the review itself is good, at least.
Okay. So like BoJack's first season. No.
Yeah, like looking back on it now, it's like, wow, that was really dumb. Why did I spend $40 on a horse mask? Anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also recently did a video on BoJack too, so if you haven't seen that, check that out. And yeah, all right. Let me know if you want me to do this sort of style discussion with anything else coming up. South Park is actually airing the night that we're recording this, so maybe I'll definitely do something on that, but maybe I'll just do a discussion. Depends on how mad I am.
Let's just hope it's better than the 20th season.
You're telling me. So yeah, thank you, and Pie Guy Rules out.
Sol out.